o'clock, so we will call this meeting to order. As you can all probably tell, I don't look like Deputy Mayor Payne. He is away today. Councillor Iwanicki is joining us virtually. And you'll also notice we're a little light on the support staff seats. Really, everyone who normally runs this meeting is doing some additional education today. So bear with us, I guess. I have no doubt that this is going to run incredibly smoothly, but if it doesn't, we'll figure it out as we go together. So thanks for your patience, everybody. Councillor Iwanicki, I do just want to mention that for the very first presentation, while the presenters are up on the screen, I can't see you on the big screen. I do have you up on my small computer here, but please feel free to jump in if I don't acknowledge you. But I will try my best. We will move to the emergency evacuation procedure. If we should encounter an emergency, please exit the building. There's 2 sets of doors off of either side of the lobby, and if for some reason those exits are not available, there's another exit behind council here. Our muster point is located near the gazebo in Lions Park, and if we are evacuated for any reason, we will not re-enter the building until we're given an all clear from staff. I'll also note that this meeting is being recorded. The recording may include your image, voice, or other personal information. The information is collected under the Protection of Privacy Act. If you have any questions about this, please contact the town's Access and Privacy Officer. Council, we have the agenda in front of us. Is there any changes to it?
Good afternoon, Council. There are no additions.
Wonderful. Would someone like to move adoption of the agenda? Councillor Bilodeau.
Say it. I move that we adopt the agenda as presented.
Perfect. Seeing no hands from council, all those in favor and opposed, and that is carried unanimously. I do see you, Councillor Iwanicki, but just a reminder to all in the room, there is a slight delay, so you'll just have to keep your hand up a little extra long as we count both in person and digitally. First, we will move right into our discussion item, the Centennial Street modernization. And we have Mr. Bilodeau along with Stantec. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Yes, thank you for having us here this afternoon. We want to take this opportunity to inform Council about the Centennial Street project, kind of where we're at with the design, and where we plan on going forward with our communication strategy, and how we foresee this developing out through the construction stages. So with me here today, I'll introduce myself. Eric Boudreau, of course, the engineering manager and project manager for the Centennial Street project. To my right here, I have Brad Vanderhayden with Stantec Engineering, and then just beside him on his right, we have Taylor Kusk, also with Stantec Engineering. These are both Stantec project managers who've been integral in making sure this is working and incorporating everything we want to see as a town of Sylvan Lake, but also, again, addressing the business's needs and requirements down there and ensuring it's aesthetically, what it is we like to have in this area. So just a quick little agenda we have before you there. So yes, introductions. We'll go through some of the project overview and history, the status, and then construction engagement procedures we have been using and intend to go forward with. So a little bit more into the team. So it's not only myself from the town of Sylvan Lake who will be working on this project. There's several members of us. The other one is Amanda Mercer from our Economic Development Officer, Chanel Brooker from our Tourism Development, and Jared Waldo from our Communications Department. The 4 of us, while there are other parties that will be part of it, of course, the 4 of us are going to be the principal pillars from the town, sort of working on different aspects of this, making sure it all comes together nicely. And then from Stantec's end?
So thanks, Your Worship and Council, for having us here. As Eric mentioned, I'm Brad Vanderhayden, the project manager, and this is Taylor Kusk. There's a few key people on our team that aren't here tonight, but you'll be seeing them at some of the open houses. The first is Jim Laidlaw. He's the landscape architect, and then Zoe Rizak and Joey Hoekstra will be like their specialists with public engagement and communications.
So to get us kicked off, we'll give you a brief overview here of the project area. Before you here, you see highlighted, this is the Centennial Street project area. But to get to this stage, considerable other projects needed to happen beforehand. Beginning with the 50th Ave modernization project, that's all the way from 33rd Street to 49th Street. We needed all that installed before we can get to this stage of the project. And then when we got here, of course, the Centennial Street, 49th Ave to 50th Ave roadway was done. In conjunction with that, we did the 50th Ave intersection as well with the street lighting, with the CN crossing coordination. And then the scramble crosswalks on Lakeshore Drive was done at the same time, getting all that configured out so that we can modify it as we need as we move forward.
The Centennial Street redevelopment project is a streetscaping, roadway rehabilitation, and low-impact stormwater infrastructure initiative to improve accessibility and safety and revitalize the downtown core in Sylvan Lake to create a vibrant community today and in the future. So I'll go over some of kind of the main project goals and features. We want to revitalize the roadway with new asphalt concrete pavement, new asphalt pavement markings, and install new wider sidewalks and decorative street lighting. We'll be adding trees, planting beds, and landscaping to create a vibrant corridor. The sidewalk on the west side of the roadway will be significantly expanded to create a space for interaction, communication, and business pop-ups or storefront displays. These improvements show investment in the downtown core and will foster a thriving, competitive, and resilient business market. Accessibility and safety for pedestrians will also be greatly improved through introduction of designated accessible parking stalls and tactile warning indicators located at each of the crosswalks. Sustainability will be increased through the installation of roof leads that drain into soil cells that eventually feed into the tree wells, supporting tree health. And new wayfinding signage will also be installed along Centennial Street and in the downtown area, promoting the walkability and tourism draw to the area. So in order to effectively complete the project while minimizing impacts to local businesses and residents, the redevelopment of Centennial Street was split into 2 phases with a 2-season construction break. Phase 1B, as Eric mentioned, included the reconstruction of the 50th Ave and Centennial Street intersection, including realigning the intersection, introducing signals and railway preemption to significantly improve safety at the intersection. A new asphalt pathway was also installed from the south and north parking lots to 50th Street in order to promote walkability in the downtown area. Phase 2 will focus on redevelopment from the Phase 1B boundary to Lakeshore Drive and include roadway and sidewalk rehabilitation, landscaping, and new street lighting. Also included in Phase 2 will be some remaining landscaping in the southwest and northwest corners of the intersection.
So we touched on a little bit of the history, how we got here, but it goes back quite a bit farther than just what I mentioned. Before you were here, you showed just high level. In 2014, this is when this project actually began, 12 years ago. So it started with us knowing we needed to do something on this roadway. It was starting to fall apart even back then, but we knew we had to look at it at a bigger picture because we know there was going to be impacts. We couldn't just go in here and just do it. We wanted to make sure when we did do it, we didn't want to come back for another 50 years to have to really do anything of significance. So taking a good look at it, many projects and things needed to be done, so it was done properly. The West Village, we ended up having to do an entire design for all the streets through there to ensure symmetry with utilities and roadways. It would all tie in and work and aesthetically work with each other as well. That works with the 50A Street and the 50A Ave projects that we've done several years ago. That was the idea behind those, is that they would tie in with what we're doing coming up this 2027. But also the Sustainable Waterfront Area Redevelopment Plan. That was a guiding document that was done at the same time, again, to give us that guidance, to get that feedback and document it so that everyone could have their opinion and then see how it is supposed to develop out and ensuring that we're following a strategy that made sense. We had to look at our transportation, our stormwater, water, and sanitary, and identified considerable needs there. And it was decided we had to make master plans. And so through this process, those master plans were incepted and created and completed over the past several years, but it took many, many years for us to be able to get those done so that we knew when it came, again, to these utilities, they're gonna get done right. We knew we had a system in place we can depend upon. And then the 50th Ave modernization, as I mentioned, from 30th Street to 50th or 49th Street, all that infrastructure needed to be done and replaced because that downstream infrastructure was needed in order to support this area in the long term as well, with stormwater infrastructure that didn't exist until recently that we installed through the course of this project starting in 2018 on 50th Ave. We had to put all that in place to compensate for the additional flows that we were going to be taking on board to ensure we didn't have upstream impacts, midstream impacts, and downstream impacts that were going to adversely impact anybody. Fast forward to 2024, and that's when we did the first phase 1B and 1A with the underground infrastructure coming through the intersection and with the intersection improvements in conjunction with CN Rail and the traffic lighting and the railway crossing improvements needed there. Through all this process, there is considerable effort put into the communications and the coordination needed with all parties, not just stakeholders, businesses, residents, council, administration. Everybody had multiple opportunities and we made multiple efforts on different platforms to ensure we were engaging with everyone at a level that they were comfortable with, be it a one-on-one session with businesses, be it group meetings, open houses, emails, whatever it was that took to make sure people were getting heard and responded to, and we could let them know that, we cared about what they want to have done and that we could show them that it was getting done to the best of our ability. So we really ramped up how we did it, and we're just kind of taking what we've done and what we've learned through that process and applying it throughout everything we've been doing here. So this is something, again, this communication strategy that we were putting forth. It began with Stantec, this team beside me here, in 2018 when we began the 50th Ave project. And as we've been going forward, it's all about improvements. How can we do better? There's always something, we hear the feedback and we always just want to make sure that people, again, are getting that opportunity. And so again, just more of the communication. We had construction coffee, as some of you are aware of, an opportunity. We were downtown in person throughout the construction season, giving again another opportunity. People come talk to us directly with any kind of questions that they want to have on this project or anything else as it relates to the town. Again, it's putting us out there and making us want to be approachable people that, we want to listen and we want to help. And so here, just have it broken out in a bit more of a timeline showing kind of how the project progressed from 23 all the way up to today. Showing the work we've done. As you see right now, we're kind of coming to the latter end of the construction break that we had planned, sort of give the area a bit of a breathing room in preparation for things to come in 27.
Yeah, and then obviously with construction happening in 2027, that's going to be a very big year. And so as Eric has mentioned, we've spent the last few years getting an early jump on the design to help everybody be very well prepared for construction. The detailed design was about 80 to 90% complete a couple of years ago. This year we're updating the drawings to basically show like phase 1 is being complete and then completing some of the electrical and doing some other minor refinements and touch-ups on like the landscaping part of it there. The street lighting is a critical part of the planning, design, and construction schedule. And if you're not familiar, like Fortis owns that infrastructure. So the common procedure is that they do all of the design and then they hire their contractors to do all the installation. On this project, that isn't really practical. You can't really have two prime contractors working side by side and trying to align each other's schedule. So we've approached this one a little bit different than most projects like this. And we're not the first ones to do this by any means, but basically we're going to be taking Fortis's design and integrating it into the design and tender package so that the general contractor that bids on this project will be required to hire one of their pre-approved subcontractors so that the construction can be streamlined. And then, yeah, Fortis began their design a couple of years ago too. It's nearly complete, so we'll be integrating that into the design when it's ready here too. And then, yeah, we'll get into it a little bit more in the next couple of slides, but the other big things that are happening right now are basically working on the next steps of the public consultation and, yeah, starting to get even some preliminary contractor input on the constructability and stuff.
So from here, you can see how we intend to move forward here in the next coming months. So finishing off, of course, the detailed designs, but also we want to be able to tender this project out come early fall. We know timing is extremely critical for this. We want to be able to get as much work done as soon as possible. And really the only way to ensure that's happened is getting a contractor on board immediately as we can. Another benefit to this, and we've seen this in the past with some other projects that were of significance, we get pricing from 2026, not 2027. So stands to reason, nothing ever reduces in price as time goes on. So we will have better rates, being able to have that early tendering process in place. And then it also allows us to do the business accommodation a lot more efficiently as well. So as we mentioned, we have been doing one-on-one engagements on the previous projects. We have done a little bit of that already, but we want to kick it into high gear come the fall season and really engage with businesses one-on-one. We've set aside definitely some efforts to be able to do that with every party that is in the downtown area that's going to be impacted. But at these sessions too, with the tendering being when it is, we can have the contractor that will be out there at that table as well. So we know there's going to be a lot of questions and things that needs to have some specific answers. And the best person to help them with that are the people doing the work. We like to think we know exactly how everything gets done, but often enough, you get out there and the practical sense of it really is the one that's the driving factor. So it'll be a more complete answer and a complete picture we'll be able to provide the businesses when it comes time to do those engagements.
Yeah, and we don't typically engage the construction industry like before the tender, but this project is pretty special because it will be a demanding schedule, and we don't want to just put some unrealistic conditions out in bidding documents about deadlines and stuff without knowing that they're going to be achievable. And then, so we definitely want to set everybody up for success. And as Eric mentioned, this means getting the contractors procured as early as possible. It'll be important for them so that they can plan like their resources, their people, so that they can order all of the materials that have long lead times. And then, yeah, also as Eric mentioned, starting to get them engaged with some of the businesses too. And yeah, and one of the things we're even considering is like welcoming like their input and getting them to propose some schedule ideas, like potentially even working beyond the hours of like your typical 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday to Saturday kind of thing. Like they might be able to have one crew work kind of earlier in the morning and then one a little bit later in the evening to try to get as much as possible done in a day. And then, yeah, with the spring, the intent is to start the work as soon as possible in the spring, like starting with removals and the installation of the storm sewer, and that could begin as early as April. One of the good things about this project compared to like the stuff on 50th Avenue over the last 8 years or so is that it doesn't have a lot of deep utilities like water mains and sewer mains and all the lot service connections. Like that takes a lot of time to do. And then it also doesn't have a lot of shallow utilities like your gas lines and fiber optic lines and stuff. So one of the beautiful things of this project is that the road work can start a little bit earlier in the spring than we're used to seeing on these jobs. And then the hope or even the expectation is that the road can be open to traffic by June, like ahead of the summer season. It's not likely that they can get all like the sidewalk and landscaping stuff done, but so we kind of expect them to likely focus on like one side of the road or the other, and kind of leapfrogging in isolated areas, and while still getting people around, like that'll be critical there. But at least it would be great to get the vehicles moving through the summer.
And so here we've broken out again, just more details on the public engagement plan we have going forward here from today. I won't go through all of this, but yeah, we'll be on May 7th. We'll have a booth at the Mayor's State of the Community Address, as well as after that, we want to have a public open house. We say May 28th here, but we're working with some local businesses in the downtown area to host this. So depending on availability of space of their venues, we will decide on a day that we can host that, and we'll certainly make that known to everyone once we have that confirmed. And, you know, it'll be a bit of a pause over the summer. We realize everyone's busy over the summer months and messages don't usually get across as well then. So come fall season, we'll be, again, hard at it. Again, communicating directly with businesses, setting up those one-on-one meetings, starting real serious engagement again, and just getting people engaged, getting feedback, informing them, and just starting that, again, that formal process with the tendering at the same time. So hopefully we can be prepared to kick things off as early as we can in the following year. And with that, that kind of brings us to the end of where we're at today and kind of what we're seeing going forward. We'd love to have some feedback from all of you. If there's anything you want to know more from us, please let us know, and we'll do our best to answer your questions. Thank you.
Excellent. Council, we'll start with any questions. Councillor Bilodeau.
Hello. I'm curious how many businesses this is going to affect. Do we know the number?
We did a count. I don't remember off the top of my head. Somewhere's around the 30 mark. Yeah, it's... Oh,
Ms.
seems like
Mercer.
Amanda's here. She might be able to answer.
Of course she knows off the top of her head.
It's a weird vault in my head. So there's about 100 businesses downtown in the area. And like Eric said, there's around 30 that would be directly impacted with the closure. And that includes retail, it includes service-based businesses as well that are down there.
Thank you. Do you have a follow-up? Sure.
So I guess my next question is, have we definitely been in touch with all of those 30 businesses? I mean, it's been a long process. Okay, so it's not going to be a surprise to anybody.
No, sorry, through the chair, yes. When we did the initial engagement session here, we did a walkthrough door to door with members of council administration, talking in person with everybody on the street and up and down in the area. We've handed out mails, we've had many open houses, we have a lot of information sessions sent out and opportunities to talk at different engagement sessions like the mayor's address. So yeah, we've been at this for several years already. And again, that's the point, is we want to make sure it's known early, it's been said often, and in many different platforms. So we're going to continue that same trend, and hopefully, yeah, we can get things going here as it needs to be.
Thank you. Ms. Mercer.
If I may add to that through the chair, we've done our very best to reach out to all those businesses that are existing right now and the business owners that exist within them right now, but there's always a possibility that a business may sell during that time, a new business may open, and we may miss getting to them immediately. We'll do our best to keep an eye on that and keep a pulse on the downtown to make sure we're reaching out and getting in touch as quickly as we can. Landowners are also aware, and we've also put some onus on them to make sure that business owners that they are inviting into their new spaces are aware of what's coming.
Councillor Ostindi, and then Iwanicki, please. Ostindi.
Couple of questions. One, just on that same vein of business contact, one of the property owners has changed in the time since we've had our open houses and stuff that I'm aware of, just because I happen to know the person. So we do have to capture those diligently to make sure they get the official news. Like I can tell them because I know them, but that's not the same as the town officially contacting them and giving them the real word. With infrastructure, question first on information. I remember the idea that there's very little infrastructure under the ground, which will help us a lot. Mainly stormwater is basically it. And I remember there was one pipe that crossed into 50A Avenue. Sorry, yes, Avenue, 50A Avenue, the post office street. Is that it? Am I recalling it right? And
Yeah, through the chair, the Councillor Stinty, you are mostly correct.
okay, all good.
There is just that
That's why I
water
asked.
line. Yeah, there is a water line that does cross at that 50A. It comes from the laneway that's south of Cobb's Block and kind of cuts across there to 50A. We did add some infrastructure. It's kind of outside our work zone, but just so it's not forgotten about, a sanitary trunk line through the 50th Ave intersection, as well as there's a water trunk line that runs through as well. We shouldn't be going there at all to do much of anything, but yeah, that is another crossing that we just got to be aware of. And of course, there is infrastructure through Lakeshore Drive that we will be tying into to pull the storm up along the west side of 50th Street for those solar cells.
Okay. So one of the comments I want to make for sure is at the time when we were pushing the budget forward to engage more engineering, et cetera, and communication, I wasn't at first in favor of investing in this block, these two blocks, because my impression was, yes, it needs to be dressed up a little, but I had concerns about the ownership around it also needing to invest in a place where, you know, if we're going to put in all this money and nobody else does, we still are going to have a beautiful piece of concrete in the middle of something that doesn't look as good. So, but I was convinced by Mr. Boudreau at the time with the information that stormwater is sadly lacking in that area. We are threatening health of lake, etc., because of unable to handle the stormwater off the buildings and everything. So two questions from that. One is, or two comments. One is that we need to communicate that because often we look at these projects, the images, and we think, oh, they're just dressing up the downtown. Why are we wasting tax money on dressing up the downtown? When really the core of it is rebuilding infrastructure and then dressing the surface once we get there and finish that infrastructure. So I think that's a message that I appreciate a lot because that's what convinced me to push, you know, to the next phase and still applies in my mind. The other one is about that stormwater. So if a piece of property isn't developed yet, and there's at least two that I can picture, how do they tie in with new infrastructure? Will there be set spots that are tied in, much like a water line T on a water main, or is it adaptable based on the design of the building in the future?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Stinty. Great questions. I'll just touch on the first comment you made there about the infrastructure and the reasoning why this is important and more than aesthetics. Yes. If you go down there, and hopefully it rains as much as it says it will in the coming days, I've observed water going into the trench drains quite a bit. I've observed less water coming out of the trench drains. Now, I don't know where the water's going. I don't want to cause panic, but it is a concern. And we do see this, and when we do see it, we try to address it as quickly as possible to, again, protect the area, protect the environment, and to ensure things are being maintained. Roads are typically repaired after about 30 years, we'll say. That's standard life cycling. This road, as mentioned, is a good 50 years, just about, by the time we get around to doing it. And so it's held up very well, but it is gone quite a ways past when we usually come in to do this kind of work. So that's why we say we want to make sure, we want to get in there, we want to do everything possible. Yes, it's going to be a disturbance and it's going to be messy, but it is the idea that we'll do it this one time and hopefully, again, it'll be 50 years, or if not longer, till we come back. So that is our plans for that area and the reasoning really behind most of it. And when you're doing all this work, let's make it look better than when we started, right? That's always our primary focus. Leave it better than you had it. So we're going to make that look good and useful and more practical for everyone at the end of the day. To your second point, shoot,
We're going to tying in new properties.
Yes, yes. So that's something too that, again, lessons learned through the course of the previous phases. We will be putting in service lines for every property, whether it exists in one fashion or not. We will make sure that's accommodated so that it can easily be done without having to dig into roadways or minimize it at best possible when it comes that need is present. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Iwanicki.
Mine was actually just a comment because Mr. Boudreau was replying to Councillor Bilodeau's question, and his light on his mic was on, but he was dead silent during his answer. So I don't know what the deal with that was, but I've been able to hear him ever since. So maybe if you see me frantically waving my arms around, we're running into some sound issues.
Thank you. And do feel free to just unmute yourself and chime in if you have any technical difficulties there. Appreciate that. Any other questions from you or comments?
This is off-project question. Sometimes when we're talking about this zone, we often talk about 48th intersection coming up fully to alongside the Service Credit Union. And is there any work needed in the future after this phase is done to do anything further up Centennial in that short area? I know we have lots to do down 50th Avenue to the west, but and we're barely hanging on to that road I can see right now. But up Centennial, is there anything needed to get to the next intersection?
Good observation, but no. I mean, we do know there is some water infrastructure in there that we know we want to address when it makes sense. But other than that, as far as we're concerned, everything is how it will be for the foreseeable future. Just a note on that water, we are exploring some alternatives that are less destructive, I'll call it, than we've been using previously. Some new technologies have been made available to us, so we've been exploring some of those paths. So we'll speak more on that in future sessions, I'm sure, but yeah.
A couple of comments and then I'll end with a question. One, I appreciated how you mentioned looking for efficiencies and if there's ways that when those come in, you know, they could alternate shifts or whatever that looks like. What I would appreciate back is once you've secured the folks that are doing the work and when you know what some of those look like, if you could arm council with that information, it is really helpful to say, you know, we've looked at some creative solutions, here's what's come out of it. Just give us some talking points on that. I would certainly appreciate that. I'm sure you'll get lots of questions at the State of the Community event. I'll also offer our services, although the downtown walk was one of my more nerve-wracking days out in the community. I am happy, and I know council would also be happy to join and take our lumps when it comes to this project to have some engagement with the businesses down there on it. So if there's the opportunity, whenever that fits, sign us up for the fun, I guess, is what I'm saying. And then my additional question is really around the last phase, and I was here for this, half of council was not. I'll say one of the things that we often hear is that intersection, you know, they did all this work to it and it's still operating horribly, and we know it's better than what it was, and there were some real constraints around that. I'm wondering if you can give just a very quick, very plain language recap for those that weren't around for the planning of that intersection of why it's so difficult and why we really did the best work that we could with that, and it's an improvement, but it's never going to be what we hoped for down there because of the railroad and other things.
Sure, and thanks for your kind words. And yes, we will certainly include you in any engagement sessions and let you know what's coming up. If anybody wants to participate, of course, more than welcome. The 50-50 intersection, yes, that was a challenging one, wasn't it, guys? It was definitely extremely unique and very challenging for all parties, not just us. Fortis, CN Rail, it was unique because of its age, because of its nature. We have pictures that we've gotten from archives. That intersection looked like that in like World War I. So that's how far back it goes. So I'm very proud that we were able to keep that intersection looking the way it does, just for that fact alone. You can see it grow and change throughout history and almost stay exactly the same, yet stay staying functional and practical. You know, the reason why it stayed the way it is, though, there are several factors. A few of them are to realign it as a standard four-way intersection, we would have to tear down at least 3 buildings in the northwest corner of that intersection, likely 4, would have been necessary, and that in itself, you can imagine, develops so many challenges. And, you know, it's kind of not something we want to entertain if we don't have to, is tearing down people's businesses and infrastructure if it's not necessary. So, you know, we looked at other variables. CN Rail was very adamant. We could keep the footprint we have, or we can do what I just said about tearing down buildings. So we looked at the footprint we had. And so, you know, just realigning the driving lanes as you come up to it so that, you know, you can see more clearly what's coming from the right, the left, and pedestrians. We've spoken with a great deal of people in that area over years. And the stories they tell us about the close calls, the not so close calls, the language being said because of them, it is entertainment value to say the least. I wish we had a camera up there over the years, it sounds like, because it was pretty amazing. I can share with you one story actually while we were developing this project. One of the pedestals for the traffic lights, you can see it's on the little island there, kind of out in the intersection a little bit. We had that surrounded with 4 pylons. I kid you not, somebody came flying around that intersection, heading south towards the railway, and made a left-hand turn directly on top of it. You can't see me online, but it's like a 2-foot wide concrete base that's, what, 2 feet in the air at least? And they mounted their vehicle on top of that. That's how little attention people were paying at that intersection when it was uncontrolled. And this is during construction zone, so there was pylons, cones, construction crews. You would hope people would have more sense and slow down a bit more and pay closer attention. But even in that environment, something like that happened. So you can well imagine when it was just a casual day, especially over the summer, people are trying to walk up and down to the lake. It was a nightmare. And so now, yes, it is a bit of an inconvenience, certainly. No one wants to wait longer than they have to, but this is more a function for safety, and safety for people to walk through the area without having to fear about being hit or in a collision with another vehicle or another person. So we're happy that it took many decades, and I kid you not. I've spoken with John Watson on this over the years, and he himself has told me back in the 70s, they've started to try to make something happen here. And time again, it was met with resistance, it was met with no's, it was met with things that were just unachievable at the time. Fortunately for us, just over the past few years, we're able to get something in front of CN Rail, in front of Transportation Canada, that made sense, that worked for everybody involved, and we're very happy with what we're able to do down there for our community.
Thank you. Any final questions, Council? Look forward to talking about this more next month. Thank you.
Thank you.
And next, we will carry on to a semi-adjacent conversation, non-standard streetlights.
Yes, you get me again.
Lucky us. Thank you.
You got it? Yes, please.
Just had a thought while you got settled in about Councillor Iwanicki's microphone challenges. I wonder if that was when Amanda spoke on that one microphone. Because she answered that question, if this one seems to be working, but we may be missing that one, so we may want to test that out later. But we have no one else ready to speak at that one. We should be okay for now. All right, carry on.
Okay. If we're all ready, hello again, Mayor and Council. Now I'd like to speak to you about Lakeshore Drive and the streetlights we have running along the streetscape in that area. So, again, a little bit of background. Lakeshore Drive is one of those projects we did several years ago, back in the late 2000s, and saw modification and improvements done along that streetscape for the betterment of our community. One of the decisions was to put some nice lighting out there, a little bit different, give it another specialized feel for the space. Over the years, administration has gone through some growing pains when it comes to these non-standard streetlights. So here you can see on the map, it's kind of hard. I can't zoom in on it, but the streetlights run all the way from Marina Bay on the west and head all the way along east, up 33rd Street, all the way up to just about the Highway 20 roundabout. So long stretch of these non-standard lights, as well as they are within the park space, within Centennial Park. So what does the town have to do? What is the town's reality when it comes to addressing these streetlights when it's needed? So the lights, they're damaged quite often. They get struck quite often because of several factors. They're closer to the street than typical lights. They're not as high as typical lights, so susceptible to vandalism, more so than most. And so, you know, when they're damaged, they get damaged easily and often. But also in our yard, it's a busy place. It's a big place, but it's a busy place. A lot of crews moving stuff around between our parks, our public works, and emergency services. Different contractors coming, bringing materials, and procuring materials from us to use on our projects and for our own use. So, you know, often enough, we need to move things around, and try as we might, sometimes these are delicate pieces of infrastructure. They get dinged, they get damaged, regrettably sometimes. So again, another thing we have to address or be careful of. Typically, as you see there, over a course of a year, we take about 5 a year on standard every year, and just to replace one takes 22 weeks. That is the entire summer season. So the area has no light. Aesthetically, it doesn't look good as well. So, you know, there's a safety factor and, you know, an aesthetic feature there that just sort of, it really just sits like that and there's nothing we can do about it. But there's not only the practical, the material end of things that's a problem, staff, the administrative factor that plays into this. And this is something else that you know, it wasn't fully appreciated or understood on what that was going to look like or what the necessity was going to be when it came to these non-standard specialized lights. And they need to track everything. And when we say that everything, it's the nuts, the bolts, the washers. It is so specific and the costing is such a detailed level that this needs to be just tracked just right. And so while they've been doing an excellent job, you can imagine this takes a considerable amount of extra effort and extra time to do something that usually on a standard light would just be done with a phone call, and then you're done with it. So, you know, there's that issue. but also, again, it's a sole source supplier. This is only supplied from one company, and so it kind of puts us in a bit of a pinch if there's ever an issue or cost increase. You know, it's sort of, we're at their mercy a little bit. And again, I wasn't here when these decisions were made, but I'm sure at that time, this was likely not the case. And so we've noticed again, just through the course of time and changes and stuff, that these are just some of the issues. You can see I have the list there, and we'll go through all of them, but some of the major factors that are playing into why these are becoming a great deal of effort for something that could be done a lot more quicker and easier for staff. But also for Fortis, they almost have to put in as much effort as we do to do all this, to track it, to organize, to schedule. It is a huge nuisance on their part. They would certainly appreciate a more efficient system as well for the same reasons. So what can we do? What options do we have available? We've been able to come up with a few ideas on how we can do this going forward. Option one, so Fortis has a catalog of standardized streetlights. These are tried and true, used throughout Alberta, you know, so they're readily available and they don't really cost anything grossly extra. Timeline deliverables are quick and easy and it's extremely efficient. We could approach them, ask them if they can add this specialized streetlight into that catalog. That is a highly unlikely, considering these lights are maybe used by one other municipality outside of us in all of the province. There's a low chance that's even going to be something they'd consider. Option two, instead of storing parts in our yard, we can approach Fortis and ask them to do it in their yard. While it alleviates some of the issues we have with, you know, moving things in our space and accommodating different things in that manner, they still have to do it. Fortis has to track that stuff. Fortis needs to move it around, and we would still be on the hook for any issues or costs. There's also permissions needed for us to head to the yard, to inspect, to categorize, to track ourselves. What's in there? What's the condition? So it doesn't really solve the problem that we currently have with the wait time, though, with the lights, the pinch point with the sole supplier. So while it is a possibility, it's something that is, again, not really, we see as a practical answer. The third option that we've considered is replacing the existing lights with another style that is from their catalog that can be readily made available and more efficient for both administration and Fortis on multiple levels. So you can see here, just comparing the three, the existing, the Domus, and the Coach. The Domus does have a lot of similar attributes with the two arms on either side, one for the pedestrian side and one for the street side, but also the banner arms are there as well. And the difference, we'll go through the difference a little bit, but it is about as close as we can get with trying to keep that same aesthetic look. The Coach one is the same style we use on 50A Ave, on 50A Street, will be used on 50 Street when we do that project. So with that option, there is some symmetry to be had with there. There are pros and cons with each, and we'll get into that here coming up. So here we just showed some of the similarities between each style, as I explained, and some of the key things to consider, though, really are the differences. Domus, a little bit taller, sorry. And the lighting, it's a different color. They don't come in yellow. That's not, again, a standard color when it comes to the Fortis application. It's more of a brighter, whiter light. That's the same for the Coach, the wider light. But the Coach also doesn't have that heightened illumination that we would have with the Domus or the existing style, with the light being on both the pedestrian and the driver's side. So here, roughly, we've engaged with Fortis, of course, before we went full bore in considering this to understand what was the financial implications. So on average, $12,000 a light would be what we'd be looking at for a straight-up cost. That doesn't take into consideration any depreciation value. Currently, say the light is, has a 30-year lifespan and is 15 years into it. Just throwing numbers out there, you'd create that ratio, and then whatever that depreciation rate is, they would cover that cost, and we would have to pay the outstanding amount, is how it would work. We haven't gone through that exercise. That would be the next step if we chose to do something to that nature, but that's basically how it works. Oh, yeah, thank you. Sorry, I failed to introduce Morgan beside me here. I am so sorry, Morgan. I got so excited for the presentation. Yes, this is Morgan McDonald beside me here, our public works staff that works with us in engineering. Her and Carrie Jo Sanders, who is behind me, they are the two principals that work for us that sort of manage all of our streetlight infrastructure throughout the entirety of the town as it gets developed, as it needs addressing repairs and anything of that nature. But yes, Morgan pointed out to me and reminded me that when the light is struck, it does not cost us anything though. So even though, we would have to pay, for the lights initially for the non-standard ones, we are reimbursed by Fortis for that, but still it is a highly increased cost over time, more so than the standard lights. And also again, that wait time is still there with the 22 weeks. So when it comes to option 3, replacing the lights out, we have 4 options for consideration. 1, just replace them as they're struck. And then obviously no cost with that option, but aesthetically, it will look more awkward than anything else. You'd have random lights everywhere. We start losing that aesthetic feel that initially we were trying to achieve in this area. Option 3B, it says 0 costs, but I think that might be a typo on that end. Yeah.
So with option 3B, as lights are hit, we could take the lights on the outskirts of town that are the non-standard, put those in place of the struck one, and then where that one was, put up a now standard one. So it's 0 cost. There might be a minimal cost from Fortis because they are having to install a different light twice, but that would give a consistent aesthetic look for that option.
Thanks, Morgan. So that's 3B. 3C, replace them in chunks, blocks, basically. So if 1 or 2 are struck, we take a look at the surrounding area and we commit to replace maybe 4 or 5. It looks like it's more, in conjunction with an overall design aspect. They sort of sit there again as a more grouping, so it doesn't really stand out per se, and it looks like something a little bit more purposeful. A little bit of extra cost associated with that, of course, because we would have to pay for the ones that weren't struck, but at least we're still trying to maintain that aesthetic feel. And it allows the project, the replacement project, to move forward a little bit quicker. Not having to wait for a 1-for-1 randomly throughout who knows how many years before each one is struck or reach a point where it's more pleasing to commit to. So. And then 3D, we just go all in and just create a replacement project with a schedule and timeline. So we just commit to beginning on one end or either end and just sort of just straight up remove and replace and get it done in a certain time frame. Another option we considered is just running the course and keeping the status quo. Again, as mentioned, the staff has a number of issues. There are becoming some safety issues with the wait times for poor illumination in the area. The demand on the area and everything. You hear from community members in that region having to have their business fronts look a little less pleasant because of outstanding infrastructure damage. It doesn't look presentable. It's something that has been brought to our attention on a couple occasions, and we do what we can to make it a little bit more pleasing, but there are limits to what we can do. And, you know, again, ultimately, you know, replacing these quicker is what they want to have happen. But we can stay the course and try to find alternatives to hopefully, in the meantime, make it a little bit more practical. And then something else is anything, all our alternatives, non-standard poles, standard poles, just switching out, making a bit of a hodgepodge with something that's, you know, replace it piece by piece. Again, that we can imagine presents itself with some of its own challenges that we currently aren't facing. You know, it is an option, but it's not one that again, that we see as a very, very efficient one, but it is something that could be considered. So that brings us into our presentation. We'd love to hear back from you. We had a few questions in our report that we'd like to get some direction from council on moving forward. But yeah, if there's anything you'd like to ask of us and discuss, please. Thank you.
That's great, thank you. So council, just in the interest of time, because of the amount of agenda items, I'm trying to budget us around 30 minutes per item. I think we can tackle some of these in a bit of a together conversation. So we'll start with if there's any questions, and then we do have the 3 questions proposed to us here. And if we could just go one by one and answer all 3 of them, since they're so tightly linked, we'll have you do that. So let's start with any questions specifically before we get into those discussion items. Councillor Reneke, you've disappeared on me. There we go. Sure, Councillor Ostindi.
Just one question regarding option 3C. In the report on page 24 of the agenda, it refers to approximately 40,000 per year for 20 years. Is that a typo, or is that, because I'm looking at the other ones, it says, other options say 0 investment, but I'm assuming they also have costs per year for 20 years as well. But I'm just trying to determine what the 40,000 means to me.
So through the chair. So the 0 investment for, whenever you're seeing the 0 investment, that's when we're only replacing the struck lights. So through our franchise agreement with Fortis, they're responsible to maintain them, and they're responsible for all those costs. If we go above replacing just the struck lights, so option 3C, we're doing some of the neighboring ones as well. If one's struck, we're going to do a couple along the block to make it look cohesive. So obviously there's some assumptions in there. I think I assumed 3 lights for every struck one we do. Obviously that's going to change by each situation, but that's where that $40,000 is coming from. And then assuming X number get hit every year, it would take about 20 years if we were to go with that option.
Another question, because I like option 3C, so I want to understand it to make sure I still like it. If we replace a number because something's broken here and we take out a block, for instance, now we have those spare parts. I remember reading that in the report. That then should reduce potential cost of any other accident, because then we can just slap in the spare parts on a broken one in another block, say next year.
And that was considered, that we would take some, put them in storage. Obviously, we are limited on how much storage we do have. So I guess we were assuming, let me see. Assuming 6 lights are being replaced with the non-standard each year. 4 struck a year, 2 of those we're going to replace out of our inventory, these spare parts that we're going to accumulate. 2 of them, plus their neighbors, we're going to replace, is what we're assuming. Of course, this is all up for what you all want. That's why we're here talking.
You're saying it would be substantially cheaper if someone just took out the whole block instead of one.
Yes, it would.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Councillor Bilodeau, and then Iwaniki with your questions. Go ahead.
So my question was the replace outer limits first. I'm just trying to understand the importance or the rationale behind doing the outer lights before the ones in the center of Lakeshore.
So the ones on the outskirts probably aren't hit as often, so to keep a cohesive look everywhere, take the non-standard one anywhere. It doesn't have to be the outer limits, it could be 50th Street and work our way out, just a targeted area is the idea to replace with the standard ones so that it's a cohesive look, and then take that good quality light that was not struck, but put it in an area that was, so that block remains consistent look. Please help me out if I'm wording this poorly.
I think so. Hopefully, does that make sense, Councillor Bilodeau? We would, sorry, yeah, not quite?
No, it does. I wondered if it was, if it was easier to take those, and I see you're just taking a whole area, swapping them out, using them to replace any others. So the zero, and yeah, I think you already said that. It was indicated as zero cost. I'm like, how is it a zero cost? There is still a cost applied to that, but no, it makes sense. It's just another option. I was wondering if there was any specific rationale as to, are those lights, and that's what I figured. There was probably less chance that they were damaged, where there's a lot more activity and vehicles downtown, it's tighter, and that's probably where the damages were happening. So I just wanted to know. I thought there was some other meaning, potentially.
Councillor Iwanicki.
So this might have been mentioned at the beginning, but outside of the recent issue that we had in front of the Best Western, where basically all their lights were taken out at once, are we having, like, how many lights are we losing per year?
Yes, good question, Councillor Iwanicki. We average about 5 lights a year. Yeah, 3 to 5 lights. Again, sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. It depends how many people are going down there and how close they're paying attention. But yeah, that's usually what we see.
Thank you. All right, let's start around into the questions. I'll start with Councillor Johansson. If you want to take your stab at those 3.
Okay, let me just scroll back up here. I guess I've never talked about streetlights more in my life than we've talked about in the last 15 minutes. So just trying to understand everything. Mr. Boudreau, you are way, this is way above my pay grade, but I guess I'm curious, what would your option be? Like, what do you believe is the best option for us? I can't sit here and pretend that I'm anywhere close to an expert on this topic. So I'm just curious, kind of, reading, there's a lot of options. I like when it says administration respectfully requests. Makes it a little easier to kind of understand where you guys are coming from. So what is, in your mind, the best overall, outside of cost, but what would be the best overall for us?
Yes, through the chair. Thank you for your inquiry, Councillor Johansson. Ultimately, it is up to all of you on how you want to have this proceed. Administratively, we like to see an option that goes forward with replacing the lights. The burden it puts on us, it is considerable, and we like to sort of reduce that. It's very a practical-minded path forward. So, any option that sort of does that in a timely manner would be what we'd like to see. But again, you guys can tell us on how you like to best move forward with how we go about doing this. Yeah.
Yeah, so I would say, for me, I would lean heavily on admin, and just hearing Mr. Boudreau say it would be it would take a lot of burden off of them. I think that's a benefit. So as far as question 1, I think that I would be interested in proceeding with changing out the streetlights.
Sure. And then to question number 2, I'm just going to go through all 3 of them per councillor, just in the interest of
sure. I
time.
think.
Do you have a preferred option?
With the limited knowledge that I have on this, looking at the option 3 sub options, I think I like option 3C. Just initially, that's be where I would go right now. And what streetlight style? I don't know if I can give a super great opinion on that. particularly have an opinion on that.
That's fair. Councillor Ostundi, same questions. Are you interested in proceeding with changing out the streetlights?
Yeah, I support the idea of going to call it the standard light selection. I lean to the Domus because it has a similarity to what we use now, and I like what we use now. I like that style. And just that dark sky idea. You think about how many people like taking Northern Lights photos nowadays. You know, they seem to not waste a lot of electricity, waste light into the sky. So that makes our electrical bill cheaper down the road too. So I think that style is a good one for good use. And I picked 3C because I think the idea of taking a block and changing it, I think it makes things look better. And I remember my dad, who had that landscaping mindset, he said, you want to avoid dog breakfast, right? When everything's just this, that, and the other thing, that's a dog's breakfast. And so if we do it block by block, and the efficiency of that too, of cost, to be able to use spare parts to replace other areas where we just lose one light post, keeps that consistent look still. So I like the 3C for that reason.
I'm on my way by, so I'll just give you the quickest answer. Yes, I'm interested in going to a standard 3C, and probably the Domus style, but truly not a huge preference either way when it comes to the style. Yeah. Councillor Bilodeau.
So I am for changing the lights. Has to be done. The Domus style was the one that I feel is the best. Just it matches closer to what we have existing. You know, I'm like, well, maybe we should do the outer limits first, or block by block. I think in a way, in my head, I'm trying to just avoid the huge cost of what we have to do. Ultimately, a block by block, I don't know, I don't really know the pros and cons to what would be easier. So because sometimes easier makes more cost efficiency. Did you already say that, Mr. Boudreau?
Sorry, through the chair to Councillor Bilodeau. Certainly, it is something that we adhere to as well. You know, and you're not wrong. Usually, the more you do, the more cost effective it is. And I'm sure there would be some mobilization costs for the crews. We would save on for this kind of work. The bigger the project, of course, the less they mobilize. But also, you know, again, we look at the practical sense too. You know, disturbance to the area. How quickly can we get this done, and things like that. So, you know, that's why we come up with these options. There's a number of ways to do it. All of it kind of works in its own sense. You know, doing it a block by block, it does present itself, as like I said, as everyone has agreed to, you know, a nice systematic way to sort of at least start the process. And, you know, maybe over a couple of years, we revisit this and say, okay, well, maybe let's do a bigger project or change it how we do it or something, see how it works, right? It's a thing that we can sort of, again, just keep making sure we're being efficient. We see something else. We talk to the Fortis crews, you know, they can come with us and say, oh, well, if you do it this way, it'll be cheaper, right? So, yeah, I think we'll just stay on top of it, stay communicating with the crews, and then just ensuring we are just trying to be as efficient with how we're doing this as we can.
Is there any priority on where lighting is most important? So in the downtown, because of all the businesses, or, you know, like if we're choosing outer versus downtown or block by block, what are the priority areas that should be done first?
Great question, Councillor Bilodeau. And I would say there's no one area really more than another. Intersections would be one where I'd say it's a bigger priority, where you have pedestrians crossing the street. You really want to highlight those more than most. But you think again too, it's a public area, a lot of walking traffic, a lot of foot traffic, a lot of late nights too. We want to make sure people are in all areas safely and comfortably. So to say one area is more important than the other, I would paint the whole area really with the same brush and say it all should be maintained with adequate lighting. And so again, with the replacement program, I don't know if I said it enough, but that safety factor, that 22-week wait period to get a light, you'd have a dead spots throughout this for several months. So, yeah.
Okay. Is there any chance that the catalog is going to change?
Okay. Likely not.
Okay.
It's been this way for a number of years. Again, we talked to them about adding to it, changing to it. It's not something they enter with regularly, like they don't make changes or anything, so no.
Ms. Phillips?
I was just going to comment through the chair. I think some of this would also be led by, where we're seeing the damages, because it'll make sense that, if these ones are often hit, then, well, let's do this section. The biggest concern the staff had, and we all had, was, okay, we have a new light here, old, new, old, right? So if we could create some consistency. So I think staff would evaluate that as the damages are coming in and kind of find the best way to make sure it is the most logical as they're moving through. Okay. So it looks good. We want it to look good as well, right? Mm-hmm. Did I hit that right? Okay, perfect.
So having said that, I think then I'd say the block by block, because we do want to be, if we can utilize some of the old lights, we can move those to locations. Let's do that. I think that would be my vote, yeah.
Councillor Mearns?
Yeah, definitely in favor with the Domus lights and option 3C.
Perfect. Councillor Iwanicki?
I'm in favor of replacing the lights. I prefer the 3B option just to do the periphery first to minimize cost.
And the Domus, is that your preference?
Yeah, I think it's unfortunate they're taller. That's my only flag to raise there, but that's an aesthetic thing. I don't care that much, to be perfectly blunt.
That's fair. Thank you. We do have Councillor Stindy.
One question, comment regarding pathways. They're not getting struck and damaged. I'm totally fine with the pathways staying. If admin looks at that and they just say, keep them and let them run their course of lifespan, that's totally fine with me. But the streets obviously are going to be hodgepodge soon. And one legal suit against the town because of a dark spot and someone got hit, it's going to be worth every penny we spend extra on this. Like a lawsuit against the town and some ugly accident, that's a lot of money.
I'll just add the additional question. Those lights that were mentioned in front of Best Western, do we have an ETA on those?
Well, if we're all right to go with option 3C, then we can replace them. We can tell Fortis to replace them with the Domus if everyone's all right with that. So that could be done in a week, probably.
I know that is a real concern along that stretch there, and of the business owner. The current situation is not the most visually appealing. So, yeah, wonderful. Does that give you what you need from council?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah. We'll move forward with replacing the lights as they're struck in block sections, as we can see, and making sure it's aesthetically pleasing with the Domus style, option 3C, if that's correct. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Council, let's take 7 minutes and we'll come back at 5:20 after a recess into emergency management. for Councillor Ostindi. I'll just say, this will never be as fun to introduce as when the title had disaster in the services, or in the title. But it's not the title on the agenda. I agree with these. All right. We will come back in from recess, and we are happy to hear from you.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. I'm just going to touch on my report just for a quick second, and then we'll go into the presentation. So under my report there, you can see that this is what we're calling kind of the initial orientation for the Emergency Management Advisory Committee. So we're going to try and keep it at that high-end level. I put in the report there that we typically have 2 meetings a year, one in the spring, one in the fall. We'll have a couple more this year just to get into a little bit more information, a little bit more detail for council now that all of council is on the advisory committee. So the intention today is just, I mean, by all means ask questions if you want, but the intention today, just so you know, is to keep it a little bit more high-end, and then we'll get into more detail in another future meeting in the near future. So just wanted to touch on that just before we get into the details of the presentation, in case you're wondering, ooh, he's being pretty vague. He's not giving us much information here. So, all right, starting off my soapbox rant. So probably a dozen years ago, it used to be called Disaster Services. And then I'm guessing shortly after Fort McMurray, the province decided that disaster sounded too bad. And so they changed it to emergency management. But then when you look at the definitions that I just put up there of an emergency versus a disaster, emergencies, as I underlined there, are incidents where using your existing resources and procedures. So that's what happens every day with the fire department, or they'll say hopefully not every day, but on a regular basis, fire department, RCMP, peace officers, those are just emergencies. Disasters are what we're talking about, and that's where it exceeds the ability of the affected community to cope using its own resources. So it's either a longer period of time, so you might have to bring in extra people, you might have to bring in extra equipment, items like that. But that's the difference between an emergency, which as we say is just a regular occurrence, unfortunately, and a disaster. And a disaster is what we're focusing on here in, as we again say, emergency management. So emergency is just the planned response using existing resources and procedures. So that might look like quite the fire that's getting out of control there, but honestly that's just something that, well, that did happen here in Sylvan, and that's something that we just responded to ourselves with our own fire department, and it lasted 4 or 5 hours, something like that. That was it. When you're talking disaster, this is Pine Lake, after the Pine Lake tornado. So again, that's kind of the scale that we're talking about when we look at disasters, just something that's long-term, you know, a real major event. Again, there's some legislation here. So Emergency Management Act is provincial legislation. They also have Emergency Management Regulation, which seems every act is fairly vague, a little bit more detail in the regulations. And then what they also have is the Local Authority Emergency Management Regulations, which basically gives all the detail of what local authorities are required to do under emergency management. So to sum it all up, basically the province has 3 documents that says local authorities or individual municipalities are responsible for their own municipality in the event of a disaster. The only thing that changes if the province declares a state of disaster, state of emergency for the province, then they'll take over. But even if we declare a state of local emergency, we're still responsible. So basically that's the essence of all those documents, is that each municipality is responsible for themselves. And then of course we have our municipal bylaw that provides some details, basically that are straight out of the act and the regulation. The one thing that I added here, so the Alberta Incident Management System, which is what the province has implemented as part of the act. It declares that AIMS is intended to provide an emergency management stakeholders in the province with a common understanding of the organization and structures that will be adopted in Alberta, as well as the processes, procedures, and terminology that will be employed to prevent, mitigate, prepare for, respond to, and recover from emergencies and disasters. Again, basically all that says is the province has told every municipality that we're responsible for ourselves, but we all have to use ICS system so that we all talk the same, we all use the same terminology, we all have the same organizational structure, so that if we have a long-term event here in Sylvan Lake and we're out more than 48, 72 hours, and we bring in somebody from the outside, a group, which I'll get into later on, from the outside to help us out, they know exactly what our org structure is for emergencies, all the terminology is the same. This all goes back, I don't want to get too far into the weeds, but this all goes back to wildfire fighting in California over 35 years ago, where different agencies use different terminology. They're fighting a wildfire on the side of a mountain. They called for a tender. Somebody called for a tender. They needed water up on the side of this mountain. ASAP, it's getting into houses. They need a tender. So I forget which division it was, but anyway, forestry called for a tender, and they called down to air support and asked for this tender. So they just sent up, or to the municipality. So the municipality sent up their water truck, because that's what a tender is. But forestry was looking for a water bomber full of water. So like 2.5 hours later, some little water truck shows up. So that's the whole basis behind ICS, Incident Command System. It was developed down in California. There's some different things that go around, variations worldwide, depending on what part of the world you're in, but essentially they're all the same. And the province has mandated that we all use that system here in Alberta. Again, part of the legislation, Alberta Emergency, or the Emergency Management Advisory Committee, you can see there, so that's what we do. The requirements say that we meet 1 time per year, which obviously we've said in our bylaw that we meet 2 times per year, and we will do more than that this year. It says in there that it consists of the mayor, all councillors in our situation, the CAO, the fire chief, the municipal enforcement manager, director of emergency management, and, sorry, I forgot to introduce Brennan beside me, deputy director of emergency management. So our org structure in Sylvan Lake is that I'm the director of emergency management. At this point in time, we have 1 deputy director of emergency management appointed by council. They have to be appointed by council. That's Brennan. And in the past, we've had up to 2 deputies. The reason we have 1 deputy now is our org structure at the town is when you get into ICS, and I don't think I get into that in today's presentation, but we have groups of section chiefs, they call them, and then below that would manage a disaster for a certain time period, typically 24 hours. Then you switch off and your second wave comes in and they do the same thing for you. And so we used to try and go three groups, 3 waves, and it's just hard to get that many people. So we've gone down to 2 waves now, and because of our regional partnerships, I don't think we need any more than 2 waves, and we'll get into the regional partnerships here later on. But we have lots of coverage here in Central Alberta, so we need to maintain ourselves. If we did 2 waves, each did 2 24-hour shifts, we can basically maintain ourselves for 4 days before we need to call in for backup assistance from another place. And everybody in the province, there's regional groups set up all over the province that we would just call in and get some support. So that's kind of why we're at 1 DEM and 1 deputy DEM. So again, this is the agency. So the terminology is very specific from the province. The advisory committee is the elected officials group. The agency is what I just talked about with our ICS group, which is all staff. Our emergency management plan. So they're called community, the SEMP there, community emergency management plans now. It looks at our emergency management structure, our emergency coordination procedures, and our emergency response plans. And all of those are based on hazard identification and risk assessments, so high-res. So Brennan and I just did, the provinces managed a database and software system for probably 15 plus years. And what that does is, again, at a high level basis, we take into things, well, what are the concerns or the risks here in Sylvan Lake? Well, we've got winter storms, summer storms, obviously. We've got a rail line running through town. We've got a highway running through town that's kind of a major transportation route for big trucks. We take all those, we dump a bunch of data into this software system, and then it spits out, based on our answers, it asks us a whole bunch of questions about each one of those risks, and then it spits out what the risk level is and what our most important or highest level risks are. Then it's up to us to answer a bunch more questions and come up with the emergency response plan for each one of those risks. So we have that built, and I'll show it to you here in a bit, but the province has just updated that program, added a lot more information on the response plan end and recovery end of it. So since they've been having more incidents in the last 10 plus years, the recovery has become more important. So now this HIRA tool really focuses on recovery as well, not just preparation and mitigation, but actually on recovery. So Brennan and I just did the training on that here just before Christmas, I think it was. And so now in 2026, we'll go through. It's quite a lengthy process. We'll go through and we'll get our top 5 risks done this year, along with our complete response and recovery plans. And then we'll just continue to build through. The old plan gave us 25 risks. A lot of them were kind of at the lower end scale, but we'll go through and do the top 5 this year, and we'll continue to build that out each year. The other things that we have as part of our emergency management plan, so we have our Emergency Coordination Center duties and a manual to go along with it. So that's for anybody that ends up in an emergency coordination center. There's a checklist of things that they do, and basically, you know, from what you hear, it doesn't matter how many times you do this, you get in there and your mind's running a million miles an hour. And the Emergency Coordination Center only assists incident command and what's happening on the ground. So we don't tell them, oh, hey, we just saw this, you need to go, you know, put this fire out over here. That's everybody's natural instinct, but that's not what we do. We sit back and we wait for them to go, oh, hey, I think we need another water truck to come in here, water tender to come in here with water. And then we find them the water tender and we send them in. They're like, ooh, we're gonna be here for 12 hours. I think we're probably gonna need more people or more food. And then we find them that and send it to them. So the incident commander runs the incident. The Emergency Coordination Center provides support for that incident. So that's very important to get across to the people when they come in, because everybody thinks as soon as you get in there, like, we gotta help stop this incident and get everything taken care of. So it's kind of a bit of a learning curve. So we have that ECC duties and manual. We of course have our reception center layout, which is over at the next source, is our main reception center, and then we have backups depending on where incidents happen. We have our evacuation and shelter in place plan, our re-entry plan, and something that's unique to us and is starting to go throughout other communities is event organizers' emergency response planning requirements. So we have so many events in town that we have a document that they have to fill out and tell us how they're going to respond if something happens in their event. Because 99 times out of 100, when you say, what's your emergency response plan in your event? Oh, we're going to call 911 and you guys are going to come help us. I'm like, maybe not. There might be a lot else going on. You need to figure out what you're doing. As a quick example, we had a group that was just doing like a secondhand market down on the lakefront, and they had said, oh, we could have up to 10,000 people, and there's going to be lots going on there. And we said, okay, so what's your plan then for security control and everything? Well, we'll phone bylaws and we'll get your bylaw officers down there to help do security control for us. No, you won't, because we're not available. So that's kind of what the event organizers' requirements are for, and we've got a big document that they have to fill out and submit for us. So. Do you want to go over this one? Okay. So this is our old risk assessment. This is, well, old, 2025. This is the previous software program that they used. And again, so you can see they're the top 5 priorities that we're going to work on this year. Extreme weather in the summer, which is windstorms and hailstorms. Hazmat with the road rail pipeline facilities. Again, the amount of actual truck traffic that goes up and down Highway 20 is quite amazing when you start looking at some of the transportation documents. A lot more than you'd expect. Tornadoes, extreme weather in the wintertime, and then high-intensity residential fire. So those are the ones that rank the top 5, and again, we'll continue to work on those. It's amazing how much these change throughout the years. We've had things like, utility disruption right there for sewer. I think there's one in there for water too. Wouldn't have been an issue 3 years ago until Calgary had their water line break. Now all of a sudden people are starting to think about it. So it's amazing how much some of these things change over the years just based on other communities. So a couple of things that we do for our risk assessment, and again, I wish if we were upstairs in the ECC room and we had more toys and documents to show you up there, this would be a lot more exciting, but we use First Do, and it's called a command module. So First Do is the software program that the fire department uses, and that does all their call outs, it tracks all their equipment, tracks all their personnel, it gives all their details on every incident that they go to, that they're called out to, whether it's a false alarm or whether it's a full structure fire. Everything is recorded in there. They manage all their time in there, expenses, everything that they purchase, everything that gets billed out, everything goes through First Do. What we do for emergency management is we have a command module that's part of it that actually allows us to use icons on the screen, and so we can put up roadblocks. We can say, okay, we're gonna have roadblocks at this intersection. You just grab your mouse, click and drop a roadblock into that intersection. And then every one of the firefighters has it, every one of the pieces of equipment that's on scene has it. Red Deer County uses it now, Lacombe County, no they don't. Red Deer County uses it, City of Red Deer uses it, Clearwater County uses it. Everybody's, I think Innisfail's starting to use it. So if we did have to call in resources from outside, so our first call is always to Red Deer. Typically they always call us, we don't call them. But we all have the same system. So when our guys go, our engines have First Do in them, and they get all of Red Deer's information in there right on their tablets. There's no delay in communication on that.
Did you mean Red Deer County or Red Deer?
Red Deer County uses it, as well the City of Red Deer is getting into it now as well.
You'd mentioned that they typically call us, and
Oh.
I can't recall us going into the City of Red Deer very frequently, so.
Yeah, so we have a contract with Red Deer County, so we do lots of Red Deer County stuff, yeah. But believe it or not, our ladder truck goes to Red Deer a lot more often than Red Deer comes out here to help out. So again, that's just the First Do in the command module. So we can run emergency management items there too. Again, like I said, roadblocks, we can set up where the staging area is, we can drop the reception center on there just so that everybody knows where it is. Everything goes through the First Do, so it's one software system and program and everybody can see it. Smoothest integration of information. We have a West Fire Suppression Plan that was built by Fire and Flood, and essentially that is, again, I wish I had all my maps and stuff here to show you. Anything coming in from the west, so if there's a wildfire to the west, if we have enough time to call Fire and Flood and get it out, if it's like a major forest fire and we need a full setup, if they have 24 hours, they can protect the west side of town and pretty much guarantee that the fire's not coming across their water line that they set up. So anyway, we have an agreement with them and a plan set up for the west side. We're working on a little bit of the east side stuff right now. We have our emergency management risk map, which we've built in-house with our IT department. We've gone out and got all the information on anything that's a hazard. So all our commercial buildings, welders, they're bringing in, Marchant Crane brings in tanks and things like that. Everything's mapped out there, every gas station's on there, and it says what they have. So you might think a gas station is a gas station, but the GTI has a huge bullet of propane there, which is unbelievably different than some underground tanks of gas underneath. You know, so we've got all of those mapped out. We've got emergency contact information on there, and then the fire department has their emergency response plans built into those. So those are all on a map. You can toggle around and click and see every one of anything that we declare as a risk within town and out in the county. So we have a fire response area contract with Red Deer County, so anything that's out there. So it goes all the way out to Kusimo. Kusimo is great because when you see the list of hazardous materials out there, you would fall over and run away, but they have their own fire contract service out there. That's how dangerous it is out in that area. So everything's out there, every gas line, every oil well, everything we have mapped out. And then again, we have our special events / parks risk assessments. So Brendan and I are working on those. That basically says, if we're gonna do a special event within whatever park it is, Lions Park out front here, what are the risks for it? And we'll map those out and hazard them. So again, windstorm, what do you do in case of a windstorm? Or you know, hailstorm or something like that. So we map all those things out and try and get those all done in advance, just so that you're not thinking on the go because everybody's panicked when something happens, so. Again, talking about that same, you need prevention, is our lakefront security and safety. I know we talked about this a little bit during our budget presentations, but we talk about what's called vehicle as a weapon. These attacks are becoming much more prevalent throughout the world and in North America. Again, Brandon and I were just talking this morning, and another one happened on last Wednesday or Thursday or something like that down in the States. I want to say Louisiana, but I can't remember exactly. Killed 9 people, ran into a crowd there having like a Mexican Days festival, something down there, and somebody just driving, had a rented truck, drove off the street, ran into a crowd of people. So as we've talked about at budget deliberations time, we're doing things like that also to manage the lakefront traffic, just because we know there's so many different diverse groups there and so many things that could happen. They're always looking, the people that are doing these things are always looking for somewhere that makes kind of a statement, but also gets lots of media attention. So we know we're not the highest on the list, but we're certainly up there on the list. So we've got that in our plan as well. Training for our agency staff and town employees. So agency staff is legislated that everybody has to have what's called Basic Emergency Management and ICS 100. And as I say there, these can be taken online at the website. Actually, anybody can. As part of your training for elected officials, you would also have access. I think you just have to, again, we'd have to contact the AEMA regional rep and get you a password, and then you can go in and do these as well. Town of Sylvan Lake requirements. So then we have an ICS 200 level that we require of anybody that's in our emergency management agency. We have a few people that we cycle out, probably half a dozen people every year. There's 22 members of that agency, and there's probably about 5 or 6 every year that change. And so we did have an in-person ICS trainer here, one of our peace officers, and he's since left and gone to another community. So now we're just looking at somebody. We'll probably, if we don't have somebody trained, Steve and Cliff both just need to get their certification as trainers. If we don't get them done, then we'll just hire somebody from the outside and come in and do kind of a 15 or 20 people group training session. The other one, so here's the 2 partnerships that I talked about earlier, was the Red Deer Regional Emergency Management Partnership. So that's everybody in Red Deer County, including the city of Red Deer. So we have a regional emergency management partnership that we train together. We do at least one tabletop exercise per year. We have regular meetings every 2 months we meet. We share information there. We do we share training courses and things. So we'll put on one course, and then everybody from, you'll send 2 or 3 people from each community to do an ICS 200 or an ICS 300 course, things like that. Plus we have it's called a partnership for our regional emergency plan. So everybody's front end of their emergency management plan kind of looks the same, and it probably should look the same because it's all mandated by the province. But then the back end, we all have our own, what we call annexes in there. So it's everything specific about Sylvan Lake. So it's all individual people's names, contact information, how many generators we have in town, where they're located, what streets we are, do we, you know, all those kinds of things, where our reception center is, where our emergency coordination center is going to be, where all the backups are. Everything's listed in that document so that we all have them. Again, if we're doing an incident that's going to last probably more than 2 or 3 days, we're getting called in. So we're going to go help another community, or somebody's going to come and help us. And again, then all that information is there. Everybody's got it at their fingertips, and you're not asking somebody that's worked a 24-hour shift a whole bunch of questions that they may or may not be able to answer. All the information's in one spot for everybody to see. And then the other one we're part of is the Central Region All Hazard Incident Management Team. This is a provincial incident management team. And there is 5 of them in the province. So it's much larger than Red Deer County. It's basically central Alberta, which is almost, if you want to call it, Leduc to Airdrie, border to border, is in our Central Region team. Again, we train, in order to get on the All Hazard Incident Management team, you have to do 3 levels of training. Day 1, level 1 is a 1-day training session. Day 2 is a 2-day training session. Day 3 is a 3-day training session, or level 3. And basically what they do is they run you through a full incident. So in level 3, you do a 3-day long incident. They bring in actors to, you know, be politicians, be the public, be business people. They bring in RCMP are involved, most utilities are involved, so ATCO will be there. So you're literally saying to the ATCO guys, how long is this utility going to be down for? And they're going, well, it's going to be down for 4 days, you know, and coordinating all that kind of thing. So it's pretty intensive training, and so we're also involved in that. So we do a lot of training overall in Sylvan Lake here for our team. Some of the local things that we do, so we do a parks tabletop each year. Once Brendan's seasonal crew comes on in May, I think what we just arranged it for 14th of May this year. So we bring them all in and we talk basically 2 different places, but everybody gets it. So it's basically the lakefront, what happens if there's a storm roll in at the lakefront or there's a vehicle accident or something like that at the lakefront. Pogattle Park, the 2 main ones, but then also everybody else throughout town. What is your role or responsibility in the event of an incident? And make sure that they all know what they're supposed to do too, and not just throw your hands up in the air and scream and run away. We do the same thing at the NextSource Center. We do the same thing with ESS Reception Center. So we just did one here a little while ago. We brought in, I think they had 8 different actors that had a cue card that said, you know, you're a mom with 2 kids and one of them has medication or something like that. But anyway, and then everybody goes to the reception center, they check them in, they disperse them to the different areas. Like one person's just, I don't know, loud and obnoxious. One person, again, is a mom with a couple of kids. They send them to the different resources that they need, order a lunch, do a debrief, takes about 4 hours, but they actual practice those as well too, just because reception centers are kind of crazy, hairy places. Everybody's very amped up at those places. There's agency member role specific training that's done by the province. We've had a couple of people go there, and then we just do some overall staff training every year. This is something council was probably interested in. So here's a template for council briefings. So in the event of an incident, where our agency is working, council is not in the same room as the agency, but we need to keep council updated. So one of the things, just a side note, one of the things we did, a number of years ago, at least 10 or more years ago now, is we used to have people like the CAO and the fire chief and the municipal enforcement manager here as the Dems. And then we said, well, if the Dem's really busy and the Dem's got lots of things on the go, then who's updating council? Because council's going to want to know what's going on too. Or the fire chief, well, the fire chief's not going to be sitting in an office coordinating things. He's going to want to be out on site, being the incident commander. So that's where kind of myself, Brennan, kind of level got involved in this. And the Dems, or the CAO's job is to communicate and coordinate with council. Keep you informed, get information back from you, be that conduit of information back and forth. So this is one of the things we have for council briefings. You can look through it and see what you think, but it talks very specific about a situation summary, budget implications, if there is any, legal implications, if there's any, tells you where our reception center is, what, if we've evacuated and how many, our shelter in place if we've done that, planned actions and strategies for the next update, or for the current period, and then when the next update is coming. And believe it or not, when the next update is coming is one of the most important things. Otherwise, you're just constantly barraged with questions about information. It's like, well, no, every 45 minutes we're going to give you an update. We probably don't know anything new since the last 45 minutes, but we'll give you an update every 45 minutes, kind of an idea. So that's our template for council briefings. So incident command post, I already went through that. The incident command post is on site with the incident commander. They're the ones running it. The emergency coordination center there, we support the incident commander. And then the last one is, so as part of our ECC, our Emergency Coordination Center, we do have a manual. It's a, I don't know, 6 or 7 page document. It's not rocket science, but it lays out the different roles of everybody that's in the ECC and very clearly what our role is, which again is to support incident commander. We do not tell them what to do. We do not tell them how to flip the train back over and get it on its tracks. We don't do those things. We support them on site for anything that they need to get the situation under control. And I believe that's it, yes.
Thank you. Council, do we have any questions? Councillor Ostindi.
Just one of the abbreviations, ESS, reception, E for emergency. What does the SS stand for?
Sorry, yes, emergency social services.
Social services.
So that's the ones that deal with the people, deal with the public, deal with,
Yes.
They end up dealing with media. Yeah, basically the people. The people.
Great. Seeing no further questions, thank you. And also thank you for bringing this information to all of council. This was something that used to take place just with 2 of us on council, but it certainly is information we hope to never use. But when if it ever did come to play, I'm glad all of council knows about it. So thank you.
And just again, thank you. And we will be bringing more details, props, website documents, all those kinds of things to the next update meeting. So you have more details on what it is we're doing.
That's great. Thank you. All right, let's move into the 2027 budget calendar. It's because Jolene's not here to do the buzzer.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
Nick, is that your turn? Yeah. Can I start? Okay. All right. Thank you, Mayor Hansen and Council. Nice to be here this evening. So, or afternoon, evening, whatever it is. Yeah, I understand we're staying on daylight savings permanent now. Is that correct? Or is that fake news? Anyway. Yeah, so try to keep this brief. So we're just looking for direction tonight from council on how you want to go about preparing the 2027 operating budget. Of course, we don't have any say on how and when we do the capital budget that's set by the province. But with operating, we do have some options, and so in the report, just outline some pros and cons. We've done it kind of after December, the last couple of years, and based on how many times I've been asked why we did it this way, I guess it didn't go over too well. But yeah, so there's some pros and cons in the report. I won't go through them. I'm assuming council has read it, of course, and of course, what some person might see as a pro, someone else might see as a con. So, you know, that's for you folks to decide. And so, tonight, of course, we're not looking for a detailed schedule once council picks the fall or winter, spring, of course, and we'll work on a detailed schedule with dates and get that circulated for everyone's response and input. So, yeah, like I say, I won't go into all the pros and cons, but be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
We'll start with questions, Council. Councillor Stindy.
Not to get you to read the whole report, but this question is, what did admin feel was the greatest cons to our later schedule this time? So what really interfered in your work? I can guess at some, but I just...
Yeah, good question. Through the chair, I think the biggest response was just getting projects started later than otherwise it would be if we had done it in the fall. I don't know if Ms. Phillips has any comments on that, but that's my kind of take on it.
Yeah, the biggest thing is the challenge of a late approval is projects, staffing. I know we're still trying to hire some of the seasonal positions that ideally we'd already have in place, and we may have some challenges there, like with some enforcement, getting them their clearances and whatnot. The advantage of doing it later is we know our actuals. So had we approved this budget in December, we would not have known our assessments would have been as high as they were, or that our school requisition was going to be as high. So we may have come in with one example I use with staff is we might have come in with, say, a 4% increase, anticipating, where we're at, probably done less and budgeted for less, knowing that we didn't have, or not knowing that we had the additional assessments. And then because this year was such a big change, there would have been big swings there. There are ways to address that where you could say if there's, assessments are higher, well, let's roll that into reserves. Or maybe we're not going to do these projects, but if in the end the numbers come out well, we might add them in later. So you're always having, that's the disadvantage, you're always having to amend the budget because it has to balance. We can't just leave it that way. So there's really pros and cons to each. So we're just looking for direction from the council. Do you want to see a December approved budget? Do you want to do something earlier in the new year, or leave it as we did it this year, or when we have all the numbers? It really was back and forth in the room, the pros and cons from our perspective. So, and the carry forwards. When we can't start till later, you'll see more carry forwards because we just can't get them all tendered and all the staffing and whatnot, or the contractors. So,
Councillor Martins.
Yeah, I recognize the fact because we had an election year, and to move it into the current year made sense. I don't know where we would have got budget deliberations in right after our election. It was jammed, right? So, and what I did here is, to get going on projects, it's better to get those approvals early. And so, I would recommend that we go back to the way we've done it in the past. I think it was 2 years ago maybe, where we had that same situation where assessments came in higher. So it was a good news story. We were able to change some budget items, put some money into reserves because the assessments were higher. So there's some options still there if the assessments come higher. So that would be my recommendation, is we have it approved in December.
With no other hands flying, I'll jump in with my 2 cents. I will say the real numbers were a real advantage, but I absolutely see the disadvantages of this late approval and seeing some projects that could have been completed in the spring that now likely won't happen in this year. And I guess the other thing I'm sorry, let me start with, because I know this is a big bite suggestion, but I know many other municipalities do really fully approve 2-year budgets. And is that something we'd look at moving towards? I think it was Canmore. I'm certain in one of my meetings, as we're talking about budget this year, he says, oh yeah, it was a breeze post-election. We had already essentially approved that. We had one meeting to do a final touch base on it, but there certainly wasn't 2 years worth of budget presentations. All of those things were factored in, and they're able to plan projects over 1 or 2 years in a longer fashion. And I really like the idea of being able to plan further out, knowing you still have to have that one actual meeting, but there certainly is a burden on administration to think further out. Now, should we be doing that? Probably anyways, doing that more long-term planning, but just something for consideration, I guess. Other thoughts? Councillor Ostindi.
I know there's the odd town that actually approved a budget in the summer for the next council. Is kind of how they set it up, did lots of deliberations ahead of time. I don't think that makes total sense because the council of the day is still responsible for the budget. So it's nice that someone did some work for you ahead of time, but you're still fully responsible for it. So you kind of should be due diligence. You should be deliberating the budget you're approving fully. So I don't think the model is to go back in time that some have. And maybe that works where there's practically no change, but I anticipate our community will always have some changes in governance, especially with a growing community. I'm totally in support of the idea of doing this again in an election year. I think there's a benefit to that. Maybe it has to be tweaked a bit to crimp the time in a bit, because there was a big advantage to the election year and all the orientations that occurred. I think Councillor Mearns said, how would you pack it in otherwise? So I support that in the future, an election year. Is there any benefit to going into the new year, but not as far as we did? Like, is there like do we have enough time? And I've done the old model too. I'm just thinking, is there advantages to going an extra month? I'm thinking not, because you don't have any new data until you really get the assessment info. I don't think there's any other advantage to going later. So I don't think I think I'm answering my question, but I'm just wondering, am I missing something? Is there an advantage to adding an extra month?
Mr. Moore.
Yeah, good question too. I don't, it's good. I can't say for sure. The assessment data, we only get near the end of February. That's according to regulation. And so going later, of course, our tax notices have to go out about the 3rd week of May, as we're currently set up. So we have to approve our tax bylaw it's coming up next meeting, regular meeting, kind of by the end of April-ish, just so it gives our tax department time to, do their work. And so, so if we went earlier, it wouldn't really probably help us because, we wouldn't know the final assessment until late February, early March. Going later, there's only so late we can go, and I think we're kind of pushing that limit now, or we did this past year anyway.
Sure.
If that answers your question.
Councillor Iwanicki and then Johannesson.
Yeah, and I don't really have a question so much as just a comment. Like I'm a big fan of doing it earlier. I know it creates a problem, especially for a new council, but as long as people are aware of those obligations going into it, I have no qualms with that whatsoever. I do have, and I've raised it in the past several times, concerns about budgeting based upon assessments. I think that's a double-edged sword, meaning that like it gives you sort of a carte blanche in a situation like this year to spend more than you would have otherwise if we didn't have that information. So I'd prefer to have the budget kind of made in isolation from that. So if I was expressing a preference, I'd be wanting it to be done before Christmas kind of thing.
Councillor Johannesson.
Yeah, so for me, I actually, I'm a strong proponent of having it done in December. That's where my brain works. It just seems to make sense to match those. I was kind of confused why we did it later. I do understand the council part. I can't say that I was more prepared in February than I would have been in December. I know we had a lot of training stuff to do, but I knew that I thought it was going to be done in December, and I'd done my due diligence to kind of figure out how that had all worked, and I think that's a part of it when you're running for the election. So I would say I would really like it to always be done earlier. I think that helps, like hiring certain people and stuff like that, and then we can see what the assessments come in. I would agree with Councillor Iwanicki that doing it in isolation is better, I don't think I'd ever really be in favor of doing like 2 years, especially in an election year, because then it doesn't give that new council the opportunity as much. So I'm happy with continuing to do it, yearly, and but yeah, definitely for me it would be a December budget for sure, even in election years.
And just to be clear, in December, really it's November budget, because you only have the one meeting in December. So when we think of that timeline, and I think that's the direction we're all going, and that's great, but it is very tight after the election specifically. Ms. Phillips.
If I could just comment on the election part, and this will be debated closer to that time period. If you take the elected official course, they suggest you approve the budget prior to the new council coming in, because Council Bill Ledo, I remember you mentioning, how do we approve budget? We don't even have a strat plan. How do we know how we're moving forward? And I believe, George Cuff, he made the comment that you're not going to go in knowing what you're approving in your budget. You're just kind of approving it because there's so much new information, but something we will bring forward prior to the next election to give you that input of, do you do a 2-year, do you do August, or do you do December, and just say, here you go, fire hose. So just FYI.
Councillor Bilodeau.
Not more fire hose, less. So I'm good with December. And I would actually, so when we went to Alberta Munis, which was right after the election, I heard from a lot of other communities the same thing. They were doing 2-year budgets. Now, I don't know if that was all the time or just in anticipation of the election. So I would say that I would not wish the process of having to understand all the new information for capital and operating on a new councillor, because there's so much happening at an election. So I'd be in support of pre-planning, only maybe in an election year. I don't see that I'd want it regularly every 2 years, because there's a lot that does go into that. But I think specifically in an election year, I would be in support of passing budget in advance for that year. So if that makes sense.
So just to recap, what I've heard is we've got some question around that election year, which is still a few years away, so that does give us some time. But generally, we're looking to move it a little bit earlier. So I wonder if we could move to that process and just touch base one more time after all of council has had the chance to do a fall and a spring. Because right now, half of us have not ever experienced that in the fall cycle. And then we can give that election year direction a year in advance, or a period in advance, if that is reasonable. Any objections to that, council? Wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Moore. Yes. Turn around and here you go. Exactly. Councillor, are we in need of a recess, or do we have one more item in us? Good. Great. Let's carry on to the Bill 28 discussion. Ms. Phillips?
Mr. McIntyre created this report for council. It's just some additional notes that we've done some research on around what's being presented from the province. I'm just going to leave it at that. So, because it's just background information, it touches on, it's really a diverse, I don't remember, omnibus is the wording I heard around what's being brought forward. But does council have any questions around anything? And I mean, there's not a huge amount we can give you because it's not actually in place yet. But does anyone have any questions around any of these items?
Councillor Martins.
I guess just in the options he presented there, just to, maintain the awareness and as stuff happens, just to keep us up to speed, because there is a lot there. That would be my only request.
Okay. Councillor Oostende.
Kind of one to watch for admin as well, and just to point out, large requisitions of municipalities to make these new capital reserves. I completely support the idea of building capital reserves. Some people might argue these new capital reserves are downloading construction costs, future construction costs on municipalities as opposed to the province. But that will all, and that's why I'm hoping admin will follow through and watch what do the regulations say in the end. I think that will become a fairly big item. I did raise one concern in conversation at ASHA with one of the government officials. Is I just pointed out the fact that not all Albertans live in a housing management zone. So if we are asking housing management zones to create new capital reserves, then we are asking some Albertans to pay and some Albertans not to. So that's a question and a concern that might play out or may not, depending on how regulations are written. But the way it's worded, we might worry that, like the Sylvan Lake is the only group of people that support this lodge, yet all Albertans can live at this lodge. And that's what I was getting at with that official to say, we don't have a full overlap on who is served and who is taxed for these institutions.
Good point. Ms. Phillips, do you have a comment there?
I was just going to comment that we have received some requests around the library, and I don't know if council's been made aware of that at all. I just wanted to bring it to your attention. There was some concerns about the legislation around libraries, so I don't know if that was circulated to all of council or not, but from our library, so I just want to bring that forward in case there's any further conversation.
Yeah, certainly. And Councillor Iwanicki, I know you were considering a notice of motion around. Is that something still on your radar?
Yeah, it is. I just haven't had a chance to really turn my mind to it, to be perfectly honest, but I do want to look into it. A secondary issue is we didn't have a library board meeting this month. It was canceled, so I haven't really had a chance to connect with everybody yet.
Thanks. Any other items on here, Council? I really appreciate you taking the time to put all this information together. It's certainly something that's being heavily talked about around the Alberta municipalities tables, the mid-sized cities tables. So ensuring we have that local lens on things is incredibly important. And I'll say around most of those tables in the conversations I'm in, it's the land use development approvals. That area is one that's really tangible that there's some concern around. But the devil's in the details on many of these things, and I know we're all looking to watch what comes next.
Yeah. And passing the kudos on to Mr. McIntyre and Ms. Devlin as well. With the planning side is definitely all her, so thank you.
Yeah, appreciate that. Thank you. All right, if we have no further questions on this one, we'll do a 10-minute recess, Council, just because the next item could be a heavier conversation, and we want to start that fresh. So let's take 10, and then we will come back. hop into Housing Accelerator Action Plan.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I hope you guys had a nice break so we can spend some significant time going over my report. So tonight I'm presenting the town's second annual Housing Accelerator Fund report, which outlines our progress to date, where we've met or exceeded our targets, and where Council may want to direct the remaining half funding. So as part of our funding agreement with CMHC, the town is required to submit annual progress reports. Our reporting period runs from January 30th to January 29th. These reports track the number of building permits we've issued, the net new units by housing type, progress and spending on each HAF initiative, and any capital projects that have been funded through the HAF funds. This evening, I'll walk through our progress on our action plan initiatives, permitting and market trends, our remaining HAF budget, and options for where Council may wish to focus future spending. So for newer councillors, I'll quickly summarize the key points of our HAF agreement and our approved initiatives. Our action plan includes 9 initiatives. This also includes an updated housing needs assessment. Each of these initiatives have corresponding start and completion deadlines that we've committed to. The initial funding of $5.5 million was awarded in 2024. And then we had an opportunity to apply for additional funding in 2025, where we were successful. We committed to permitting 25 additional apartment units through an initiative to reduce land use bylaw parking requirements for apartment developments in exchange for an additional $540,000. The funding is distributed in 4 equal annual payments. And the final payment is contingent on meeting our 575 permitted housing units, with 30 of those having required to be affordable. We have until January 29, 2027 to achieve our housing targets, and we have until January 29, 2028 to fully spend all of the HAF funding. We are to provide annual reporting to CMHC on our progress and ensure the reporting is accessible by the public, with a final report on how we've spent the HAF funds by the end of April 2028. So the HAF agreement and amending agreement for the additional funding is included as attachments in my report. So the majority of our initiatives have focused on missing middle housing, things like row housing, plexes, and secondary suites. This sits between detached homes and large apartment buildings. These housing forms support gentle density and typically offer more attainable options for smaller households. Some initiatives provided direct financial incentives, while others focused on reducing regulatory and permitting barriers. All initiatives have now been completed except for the permitting software, which I'll speak to later. So I'd like to just kind of outline the apartment incentive here. So the apartment incentive is intended to support the development of larger scale apartment buildings and offers a rebate of the project's building permit fees. These fees can be substantial and typically exceed $80,000 per project. The initiative was approved in July 2024, and its purpose was to incentivize the development of more apartment units by reducing upfront costs. The program's target was 217 new apartment units to help meet the needs of smaller household sizes and income levels. We have issued building permits for 174 apartment units, with a building permit for an 89-unit project in Iron Gate currently in review. Once that project is approved, we will have met our apartment target. To date, 1 apartment project has applied and received this grant, and we expect another 2 to 3 projects to take advantage before the program expires in January 2027. So moving on to the multifamily tax grant program, this targeted row housing specifically by offering a $3,800 grant that is applied to the tax account of new row house developments. This program intended to offset the cost for new home ownership and incentivize the development of larger rental units. The program originally budgeted for 120 grants of $3,800 each to incentivize the development of this missing middle housing type. And administration noted that the market was already influencing the development of these types of units, and as we approached the total missing middle target of 244 units, with still a year to go in the program, administration recommended to council that it might be a better use of HAF funds to discontinue the program and direct the budgeted funds to other projects and initiatives. Council discontinued the program in September 2025. Overall, the town provided grants for 41 row house units prior to the initiative ending. So the secondary suite loan program, paired with relaxed land use regulations, provided an interest-free loan of up to $30,000 to encourage the development of 26 new secondary suites. The loan program offers an interest-free loan of up to $30,000 to develop a new suite with favorable repayment terms over 5 years and no penalty for early repayment. The program also provided 2 options for up to $5,000 of loan forgiveness if the applicant either provided the suite at an affordable rate, generally being $1,000 for each year the unit is rented below market rates, or if they installed accessibility features to, say, support a senior or disabled tenant. During implementation, we identified that the MGA restricts municipalities from issuing loans directly, and as a result, working with legal, the town created the Homes for Sylvan Foundation, which is an at arm's length and nonprofit to administer the program. The society will remain once HAF is finished and can be used to advance other future affordable housing objectives or initiatives. Despite extensive promotion, interest has been limited in the secondary suite loan program. Importantly, we've already exceeded the secondary suite target, permitting 32 units where 26 were required. Council may wish to discontinue the program and redirect funds, or keep it active to establish a revolving affordable housing fund as loans would be repaid to the foundation. As there is still some time left in this program, we may get some loan applications that come in. The program ends December 1st, at which point any remaining funds could be redirected at that time. While no funds have been transferred to the society, Council did approve an initial budget of up to $150,000, enough to provide for 5 $30,000 loans. The program, again, as I mentioned, ends December 1st, and any of the remaining budgeted funds could be redirected at that time, giving the town another full year to consider where to allocate the remaining budget. So we also undertook 3 initiatives that amended the land use bylaw. This included relaxing secondary suite regulations, such as making secondary suites a permitted use in detached dwellings, and they're now, we now consider them as a discretionary use in duplexes and certain row houses, provided they're able to meet parking and all other supplementary regulations. Council also removed the separation distance between secondary suites and increased the cap on the percentage of development that contain secondary suites that are permitted in a neighborhood. We also redistricted the waterfront from a direct control district to more conventional districts. This was intended to ensure landowners and developers know what can be developed and provide greater certainty for approvals. The redistricting was a recommendation in the SWARP that was approved in 2019, as direct control districts are considered to discourage redevelopment, as approvals were not certain due to the absence of specific development regulations that can be followed. We also reduced the amount of on-site parking required for apartment developments. Planning and Development had seen variance requests for most of the recent apartment projects over the last few years. These were builders that had built previous apartment projects, and it was noted the amount of required parking for those projects was not actually being utilized and unnecessarily increased the cost for developing apartments. The reduction was minor and based on recent variances. The HAF also required us to produce an up-to-date housing needs assessment. Our 2019 housing needs assessment no longer qualified, so through CMHC, we accessed the Housing Assessment Resource Tool, or what they call HART, and this was free of charge to us. The data in the HART tool is readily available to the public, and with future federal census, the town may use this tool to update the data categories outlined in our Housing Needs Assessment Report. The town also hosted a Housing Summit in June 2025, where we presented the housing needs assessment data to a range of stakeholders, including developers, affordable housing providers, advocacy groups, and builders, with the intent to bring these groups together that can help move affordable housing projects forward. Also, a new housing webpage has been created on the town's website that provides a number of resources to groups looking for information about housing need and grant funding available at the various levels of government. The Dollars for Doors program was one of our last initiatives, and it was approved in September 2025 and is our primary affordable housing tool. This program utilizes a call for proposal application framework. A proponent must meet the program criteria, and the amount of funding to be awarded will depend on how deeply affordable the unit is and the number of years they're willing to maintain the rate for. Administration will review each application for compliance with the program's criteria and bring each application to council for approval with a recommended funding amount to a maximum of $30,000 per unit. We have been engaging with applicants of a number of multi-unit projects, encouraging them to apply and explaining the process and offering any needed assistance. To date, we've had 2 draft proposals that we are working with the applicant on revisions, as they do not quite meet the level of affordability to qualify for the program. And I've been in discussions with 2 other projects that have indicated they need to review and consider how many units they may want to apply for and what level of rents they're prepared to commit to. The total half funds budgeted to this initiative is $900,000, with hopes of attaining our 30 affordable housing units. So the permitting software initiative supports a modern digital permitting system that improves customer transparency, reduces internal paper processes, and provides better data. Software selection is underway, and we expect online building permit submissions to begin this summer, with additional functionality rolled out over time. The initial benefit will primarily be convenience for applicants, as current approval timelines are already relatively strong, averaging 5 days for permitted uses, 15 days for permitted uses with a relaxation, and 20 days for a discretionary use in 2025. So now moving on to the number of building permits we've issued to date. In our first reporting period, we permitted a total of 350 units, and to date, we have issued another 248 building permits, bringing the total to 598 new units that have been issued a building permit. Notably, secondary suites have exceeded their target, and row housing has outpaced detached and duplex forms. This reflects market conditions. So our overall half target was 575 units, and we've now reached 104% of that goal. What remains is to achieve 43 apartment units, which will be met once the building permit for a project in Iron Gate that was submitted a few weeks ago is approved. And we also have to attain our 30 affordable housing units, which remains the key focus for the remainder of the program. Our main focus over the remainder of this year will be to achieve the 30 affordable housing unit target. As noted, we are working with some applicants that have received building permit approval and those that are currently in the development permit approval stage to apply to the Dollars for Doors program. We are hopeful that we will be able to meet this goal by the end of the HALF program in January 2027. We will discuss later in the presentation options that Council may want to consider additional investments in affordable housing projects to help make them more feasible. Timing is, of course, a primary consideration on where to spend any additional HALF dollars. So I also wanted to briefly provide a high-level snapshot of current housing market conditions in Sylvan. Please note that the real estate data varies significantly based on the source. However, it will provide an indication of the trend we have seen towards higher and higher housing costs. As of October 31st, 2025, the rental vacancy rate in Sylvan is sitting at 2.8%. This is a significant increase from last year, where we saw our lowest ever vacancy rate of 0.6%. With 32% of all households in Sylvan being renters and earning a median annual income of $66,000, it is important there is a variety of rental options for various household sizes and incomes. A healthy vacancy rate is considered to be somewhere between 5 and 10% to stabilize rental rates. As you can see, Sylvan is still below the provincial and national averages. However, with the amount of new apartment projects underway, we expect to hit the 5% mark next year. The increase in purpose-built rental housing is mostly related to the MLI Select financing program offered by CMHC, which offered favorable financing and interest rates over long amortizations in exchange for meeting energy efficiency criteria and providing a percentage of the units as affordable. This financing has made apartment projects more feasible, and the town is hoping to work with a number of these projects to dedicate additional units as affordable through our Dollars for Doors program that they would be able to piggyback off of. So in this slide shows you the average rental rates in 2025 for each bedroom type. This data has been collected by WCC. This includes vacant units, which is a good reflection of what someone looking for a rental in Sylvan would expect to pay. We have seen and will continue to see an increase in single-person households in our community. 36%. There was a 36% increase between 2016 and 2021 federal census. This included many seniors, indicating a need for one-bedroom units. Seniors make up approximately 25% of all single-person households in our community. As of current CMHC data, as of November 1st, 2025, the town has an inventory of 113 one-bedroom units and has added 25 new one-bedroom units since 2022. One-bedroom units have the lowest vacancy rate of all bedroom types and have seen the largest rent increases. Seniors looking for smaller, affordable rental units are faced with long wait lists. The town would benefit from the development of more one-bedroom units to help meet increasing demand and stabilize rents. In terms of home ownership, 68% of households own their own home and have a median annual income of $107,000. Home ownership has consistently decreased over the last 3 federal census, and it will be interesting to see the change that has occurred in this next federal census. The current average price of a home across all housing types in 2025 was approximately $435,000, which is up from $355,000 in 2023. The number of building permits issued do not yet reflect the impact of built units on affordability, but based on the number of permits issued as these units get built, we should expect to see some benefit to affordability. So I will pause here if you have any questions before we move on.
Start with those questions. Councillor Cindy, was that a face of a question? Sure, go ahead.
Just regarding that HEART program that we're part of, when new census data comes in, or real estate data comes in, how quickly is that process to make a new needs assessment report? And is it costly to do that? Like, is it something that when the data's in, it just takes a month to propagate it, or it takes a consultant to build it? Is there costs and time?
So I believe the HEART program is a fairly new program. So when we originally connected with them, they were the ones that created the housing needs assessment template for us. They put in all of the data that they needed to get that out. The expectation would be is that once the census data is available, it should be uploaded into the tool, and we should be able to access it and then just update the numbers that are in the housing needs assessment now, just using the exact same format and just updating those numbers. In terms of when that would be available, I guess we'll have to wait and see, but I don't imagine it would be a long wait period, and we'll be able to keep our housing needs assessments relatively up to date, much more so than we have in the past.
Because that's critical for any big development, thinking about our lodge and the work they're trying to do towards projects. You know, we hope there's a project on the, you know, at the next sunrise. Maybe it'll take a few more sunrises, but whatever we do in the near term, our community and the lodge is likely to do more in the future as well. And there's likely more than one project in our horizons. Yeah. So I'm just curious, because sometimes to get big grant money, you need updated needs assessments. And so this is interesting to hear this.
Yeah. And I'd like to add that access to that HEART tool is free. So it's no cost to us. So.
Councillor Mearns.
I know we can't go back in time, but, you know, excited about the whole half funding and everything that we did and are doing, so appreciate all the work there. One of the things we heard from council for the last few years is the struggle sometimes with permitting and all that, and so just referring to page 141, you know, we thought this was going to happen a lot sooner, right? Like the start date was February 12th of 2024, and it was going to be a year to get it done. Looking at the timeline now, it's going to be sometime fall of 2026. So what happened there where we weren't able to get the permitting software sooner based on, you know, I think I've asked the question a couple of times in the reviews, but just what happened? Why such the long delay in the permitting software?
Okay, I'll actually defer that to Ms. Devlin.
Yes, that's a great question. So we did prioritize some of the other initiatives that we knew we needed additional time to get implemented so that we could advertise them and ensure that developers had time to plan accordingly. So we did prioritize the permitting software slightly later. We also then had to go through the entire procurement process, which initially we didn't think we had to, which added additional time. And now we're at the process where we're down to selecting between likely two proponents and bringing a decision back to council to confirm that and allocate the funding for that. So it did get pushed off just to make sure all of the other projects were in place and the funding could be available so that developers could plan accordingly for those, because we knew it was going to take some time to incentivize those.
Sure, Councillor Mearns.
Just to follow up then, so we haven't secured anyone yet, so we're still looking at a year before it's going to be done based on the previous timelines?
Yes, so we anticipate having applications online for building permits within the summertime is our target date, so we can be accepting those. The rest of the software takes quite a bit of time to build out all of the processes for all of the permitting. We wanted to implement it in a staged approach. However, the proposals came back saying that they didn't recommend doing that, which was rather disappointing. It was going to cost more money to implement it in a staged approach. So now we're looking at a one-time sort of big bang implementation process.
And if I could just hop on that to explain the challenge that I'm having. I pulled up my speech from the 2024 Chamber Awards, and the second, right after I did introductions, I brag on that we are researching new permitting software system to serve you better. More details on this coming in 2025. And then in the 2025 year, in my chamber speech, I said, we're moving along track with this. Early next year, you'll be able to start putting in your applying online. It is really a challenge to go back on May 7th and say the third thing for the third year in a row, because I didn't make up these notes. I, asked for feedback from economic development, from other departments. They were provided to me, and then I wrote them in a speech, and I feel really silly. So I am struggling. If there's any update before May 7th with some firm dates that I can put in that, please give me something, because I cannot go back and say for the third year in a row, stay tuned. We're excited that this is coming. So please, I know that's weeks away, but we're really anxious to get this moving. It's something we've been hearing for a number of years and really looking forward to delivering on that outcome. Any other questions on what we've heard so far, Council? I'm starting to learn your face, and
I think is it more appropriate later.
Fair. And seeing none online, all right. We're going into the what's next conversation, I think.
Okay, so now we're getting into the fun stuff now. So the total amount of half funds the town received is just over $6 million. And to date, we've received 3 installments totaling just over $4.3 million. The final installment of $1.5 million is due by April 1st, 2027, and will be contingent on how successful we were in meeting our housing targets. It is important to note for the remaining conversation, while we have already surpassed our total half target, we have yet to achieve any of the affordable housing units. So in this slide, we've outlined the amount of half dollars budgeted to each action plan initiative. The total budget to complete all of the initiatives was approximately $2.4 million. After fully funding all the initiatives with the current funding we have received, there is just over $1.9 million remaining half funds that could be allocated to other projects council wish to undertake. Depending on the final cost of the permitting software, and if we wish to consider prepaying the subscription and hosting fees for a certain number of years, there may be a slight adjustment to the availability of the $1.9 million. Council may wish to increase this $1.9 million by discontinuing any of the current initiatives, such as the secondary suite loan program. While administration does not recommend canceling any program until we have achieved all our targets, including the affordable units, this is an option that you may consider. So if the town does receive the final payment next year, there will be approximately $3.6 million in remaining half funds that would need to be spent by January 29th, 2028. Any unused funds must be returned to CMHC. The remaining $3.6 million can be spent on any of the eligible projects listed in our half agreement over and above our action plan initiatives. The remaining time this evening, we would like to discuss with council where they may wish to focus spending the remaining half funds. Administration would then bring back a detailed report for the specific project or initiative for council to approve. Council may want to keep in mind that as it sits now, if we were not able to achieve our affordable housing units and CMHC held back the final installment, there is $1.9 million in unused half funds available now. We are not the only community struggling to achieve affordable housing targets according to our CMHC advisors, so we are not sure if there would be any leniency if we were not able to achieve the 30 affordable housing units. We have been told in cases where a municipality did not meet all their targets by the end of their half program, the amount of the final payment will be up to the minister to decide upon. We would hope that there would be some consideration for our overall performance and perhaps just a reduced payment if we were not able to achieve all of the affordable units. But this is something we would like council to be aware of when considering which recommended projects should be prioritized as we move forward. So as per the half agreement, funds may be spent on a broad number of projects or initiatives, provided they support the development of housing. This table is directly out of our half agreement, and any of these projects do not need prior approval for CMHC to undertake. However, we are able to run ideas through our CMHC advisors, which we meet with every few months, to ensure that the projects do fall under one of the approved categories. Funds can be spent on affordable housing initiatives, including the construction of new affordable housing units or the repair of existing ones, or the purchase of land or buildings to partner on affordable housing projects. Infrastructure projects can also use half funds, such as water and wastewater, sidewalks, trails, and lighting. So administration had previously discussed these options listed here on the slide for council to consider. And while no direction was provided at the time, it was agreed that we would review projects at a later date once we had a better understanding of the remaining half funds that we would have. We discussed putting funds towards an affordable housing project for seniors, purchasing land to partner with one of our local housing providers, implement trail lighting along the segment of trail at H.J. Cody, as well as considering putting funds towards some water projects. So administration recently met internally to discuss what potential infrastructure projects we could recommend to be funded by half. It was noted that projects funded by off-site levies would be complex, and administration focused on projects that had smaller price tags but had large impacts that were not currently budgeted for or budgeted farther down the line. Using half dollars to fund these projects would ultimately reduce the burden to taxpayers. Council may consider installing street lights on the west side of 50th Street from Pelican Place to Memorial Trail. That has an estimated budget of $900,000. This project would increase safety and visibility along this stretch that has seen a lot of new development, including the likely increase in pedestrian traffic once the high school is built. Could also consider installing a section of trail on the south side of 47th Avenue between Riders Ridge Boulevard and the ATB building. This would support walkability to key commercial areas from surrounding neighborhoods. Also, a number of years ago, the H.J. Cody High School students presented to council on the need for trail lighting along the old rail line trail. This project would ensure safe, well-lit trail system all year round, and it is recommended to focus on a trail segment along H.J. Cody School. The cost estimate provided by Parks in 2023 was between $490,000 and $565,000 for this segment. However, we do expect that this likely will have increased since then. Another infrastructure project that could be considered is the upgrading of Water Well 12. This would support water security and would cost approximately $200,000. So projects that would fall under the capacity building category could include updating policy frameworks that support housing development. This could include a parking study and strategy that we already discussed with council. The estimated cost for this project would range somewhere between $55,000 and $75,000. Funds could also be dedicated to updating the most significant regulatory tool influencing development, being the land use bylaw, along with an update to the municipal development plan that sets a vision for how the town should develop into the future and includes policies related to social, environmental, physical, and economic goals. Updating the MDP sets the framework for decision makers so that the town can achieve the vision for the community, and it informs all municipal policy. Both of these documents are quite outdated, and many conditions have changed in our community that need to be taken into consideration. Council may wish to also purchase land and partner with one of our affordable housing providers to help unlock large impactful project potential and other sources of government funding. So while we admittedly cannot say for certain that the HAF initiatives were the primary reason the town has seen so much growth in housing, we do know that it has provided the town with funds we would have never otherwise had access to support some of these infrastructure projects and policy framework updates that we're discussing here this evening. Ultimately, the HAF funds would reduce the burden to taxpayers to fund these projects. Another policy framework project that we would like to recommend is to also undertake a housing action plan that identifies strategic priorities and actions that would continue to address housing in our community beyond HAF. By taking a strategic approach to housing, we can proactively ensure that we meet all of our residents' future housing needs and direct development towards meeting those needs. We estimate a housing action plan to cost approximately between $50,000 and $100,000. So as we would need to spend the half dollars before January 29th, 2028, it's important that council indicate which projects to undertake, as many of these may take a significant amount of time. In terms of policy projects to update the land use bylaw and MDP, administration would recommend the parking study be prioritized, as this would inform the land use bylaw update. It is possible to update the MDP alongside the land use bylaw, as these two documents work hand in hand together. The purchase of land could be something the town holds on to until the right project comes along. However, we would still need to consider how to achieve our 30 affordable housing units that need to be permitted before January 29th, 2027. As noted before, we do not know how CMHC would determine our final payment if we were not to achieve those units. So our advisors indicated the decision would lie with the housing minister when we submit our third annual reporting in March 2027. So on to an update regarding the opportunity we had to apply for top-up funding. We did propose a new initiative and committed to attaining additional permitted units. We had proposed two new initiatives, one being a policy to fast-track permit reviews for multi-unit and affordable housing projects, as well as a policy for underutilized municipal lands that would provide direction of identifying surplus lands to support new housing development. There was limited funding available, and unfortunately, we were notified that we were not successful in securing additional funding. So I'll conclude by opening the discussion. Administration is looking for direction on which initiatives council would like to prioritize, how council wishes to allocate the $1.9 million currently available, and how we should plan in the event the final installment is reduced or withheld. And are there any projects not presented that council would like to consider? With that, I'm happy to support council's discussion. I also have a spreadsheet that we can use to help us prioritize projects, see where we're at in terms of costs, and see what those budget requirements are. And I'd like to note that if we were to receive the full half funding, all the recommended projects presented could be funded within the $3.6 million remaining half funds. Thank you.
Before we go any further, I'll look for council to make a motion to extend past 3 hours. Councillor Mearns.
I'll make a motion to extend past 3 hours.
Excellent. All those in favor and opposed? And that is carried unanimously. I love a spreadsheet. Okay, let's start with the proposed initiatives. Are there any that are of a high priority to you? And let's just go around one councillor to another that we'd really like to flag. Councillor Bilodeau.
I'll start. Seniors housing. So we actually added seniors housing as an advocacy item to our strat planning. So adding in seniors housing for half funding aligns with our goals. I know there's a lot going on in half funding. There's lots of ideas. I was told a story on Friday, actually by Klaus from the Lions Hall. We met with them with our housing consultants with the Sylvan Lake Lodge Foundation. And he told me a story that he was the one that actually brought the information for the half funding to our previous CAO, Sean Durkin, with the idea that we would seek half funding for Sylvan Lake for seniors housing. So I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what he told me. So I'm all in on seniors housing. We are currently working with a housing consultant, and our board will be bringing forward a letter from the foundation and the housing consultant asking for half money, specifically around $350,000, could be more. But we are actively in the process of looking for housing for the seniors. We have 59 rooms at the Sylvan Lake Lodge, and we have 48 people right now on the wait list. And I don't know how many times I'm out in the community, I'm at chatting with council, and the subject is we need seniors housing. So I could kind of go on and on about that.
We spoke a little bit because I know that letter is coming with that request. I have a question. Is any portion of that able to be completed within the timelines?
What's on the proposal? Yes. Because it's all in the nature of, so, and this is where, when I say, bring me half funding, tell me where we can spend it. There are many project costs that have to get us to, in the process, but not necessarily to the point of building yet. There's a lot that happens between consulting, searching, doing soil testing, you know, that sort of thing. So, and that's what, those are the questions that I keep asking, which is like, what can we spend it on? It's all for the good of affordable senior housing. It checks a lot of boxes. It's prior to having a building permit. I know we're under a huge time constraint, but there are lots of ways to spend money before you even shovel ready, right?
So I guess just that question, can we spend it on something that wouldn't be to the point of building within that time period?
Through the chair, yes, we could spend it on that, but we have to be cognizant of trying to achieve those 30 affordable units in order to get that full last payment. So.
Well, I could speak to that too, because honestly, what we're doing is the Lions Club came to us. They wanted to sell the town the building, and we just discussed purchasing land to partner with an affordable housing provider. The Lions Club has now gone directly to the Lodge Foundation because they want to give their building to the Lodge. They're sure there's some trades, they just need to be housed. They want naming rights when the new facility is built, but you know, is there room in this whole thing to look at that affordable housing? Do we call affordable housing offering housing to seniors for subsidized? Like, because that's essentially what we do at the Lodge. Is that one and the same, or are they completely different when we talk affordable?
Through the chair, so we've defined affordable housing in our community to be a household that's earning less than 70% of the area median income, and that they're spending more than 30% of that income on housing. So that number will change with the census as the median income changes, but generally it targets low to moderate income families. So that currently is sitting about any household that's earning less than $66,000 a year and spending more than 30% of that income, which works out to be about $1,600 a month. Any units that are rented below that amount of $1,600 a month could be considered to count towards our affordable housing target.
And you know, the Lodge is open to any sort of mixed model. We've talked about non-market rent, so building a building that houses commercial, or, you know, what about part of the building being seniors and part of it being affordable housing? So I don't know if Ian probably wants to speak to this subject, but we could spend the money. It's just tell us specifically what it is that we need to do to get that money before it's gone, really.
And I'll just jump to Ms. Phillips.
I just wanted to clarify, so for us to meet that target of the 30 affordable, I'm questioning whether the Lodge would work in that it won't be built. So by what date do we need to have, I'm assuming it's development permits in place for these affordable housing? Like, what do we need to achieve that to get that additional funding, and at what time?
So in order to get the 30 affordable units, we need to achieve a building permit, an approved building permit, before January 29th, 2027.
So that's where I'm questioning whether, with everything you're saying needs to be done, I don't know that, I love the idea, but I don't know that the Lodge would get us there, would be my question. Can you get to the development permit stage by that date? Or do we need to ensure we have something else to have that funds to still purchase land? But I don't know That's my only concern with that.
Councillor Ostindi, and then Ms. Devlin, sorry.
Two thoughts I want to share right away, and then I could love to jump in more to what Councillor Abilito has raised. Those 30 units, we have to get them. And I am ready to raise it to $45,000, dollars for doors. I don't care what it is, because if we don't get those 30, we don't get that $1.5 million afterwards, or it's very threatened. So I am willing to put everything onto the dollars for doors to make that, happen. That, and you've spoken to some permits potentially coming in. So it's not like there's zero, well, there is zero, but there's a chance for several to come. I want to get them over the finish line. I know Sylvan Lake Community Housing Society, they've got 7 units they're planning right now. Like, there's groups that we can support, and we can make sure that they go over that number. And private builders potentially too, or even secondary suites if we can pull something off. And just on the affordability side, you give someone solar panels, you are creating affordable housing. So I don't want to just check boxes. I want to make sure people can live affordably forever. And think you can do more than just give them dollar per doors. You can support certain projects that reduce their costs, which makes it affordable. Their lives. So then specifically on this group.
Can I jump in on your one comment before you go back to that one, if that's okay? I'll just say I absolutely agree. The political landscape right now is not that they'll take a little bit of money off. We're watching some of our neighbors go through this process. If you don't meet it, how much they could claw back. I just want to echo that I would do almost anything above anything else to hit those target units within that time frame, and I think we should prioritize that, because I do have a real fear with the political landscape of today and what's happening just right in our region that it would be more than a few dollars that go back. We'd be missing out on substantially more. No, sorry.
So if dollar doors can go up and then dollar amount, and then throw on extra incentives to make that building an affordable building and attractive to many. Under the projects, many of them don't grab me, because I'm philosophically thinking about this money to say it's got to be for housing. And I'm okay though with things that go into the future. These are investments into the future. For instance, the Housing Action Plan is one example. It talks about planning and building our strategies for the future beyond HAP. Like, sure, it's coming from some HAP money, I should say now. But it builds up. So I think those a few of those studies do help that. I can support trail lighting to HJ Cody, but not under the HAP, because I don't think it's directly to the housing question. However, water well is. I can justify that water well number 12 upgrade will give our community a sense of security that when we're welcoming new people into our town and encouraging builders to build, they know we have good water here. So under that specific list, that's kind of the 2 areas that I most strongly align with. And then I can go off on a number of other ideas here I've written, but maybe I'll pause.
Yeah.
But I will say that land is going to be critical to these major projects of lodge, and it's whether they build more lodge or can see, one of the problems with the lodge is we can get ready with our consultants. The cost of consultants, we're investing at least $25,000 in the next 3 months right now. We've already blown a month by. We're spending money on consultants right now by the tens of thousands of dollars. And to finish off that's why that letter is going to be coming in the near future. But we could get to the finish line of planning, and then we have to ask for money from the province, and to build 40 bedrooms, lodge-style bedrooms in today's prices is a 40-building apartment is $20 million. It's $500,000 per unit. And that doesn't cost $500,000 to make 600 square feet. It's the dining hall, the kitchen, the parking lot, all those systems in a building that support seniors. So anyways, just like it's astronomical money. The more investment we have at the community level, like the Lions Club, the town, the Lodge Foundation, That's what's going to pull the provincial government in. They're not going to jump into, well, we got $40,000 and we got this great idea and we need it. Because I hear stories of other communities that are bigger than us with bigger waiting lists, unfortunately. So we're in a competitive setting. So we have to show as a community, if we believe in this, we have to show that we're willing to lock some land down for future lodge or mixed apartment building, because we might not build a lodge first, sorry to go on and on and on here, but to piece the story together, we might have to build an apartment building has mixed seniors in it, affordable market level, so that people from, let's say, the manor could move out so that we could knock down the manor and build there. Because we don't really want 2 kitchens and 2 lodges in 2 different places in this town, and there's no land there. Well, there's some land next door that could sell, but anyway, but ideally we've got this manor property. The province has this manor property, you know, and all these things are in play right now and super complex. But the bottom line is, we as a community have to have real things to lay into this project, like land or cash, so that we can land those $60 million grants and stuff like that, or half of it from the province. Province normally just funds up to half, I understand, and the rest gets mortgaged and supported by community. Anyways, a great rant, I think.
Thank you. Councillor Iwanicki.
All right, so I'll sort of second it to an extent what Councillor Estindi and Bilodeau are saying. A little bit more, I suppose, on Estindi's point. I don't support any of these projects with the exception of the water well. Like you hear enough from people saying water's a problem, water's a problem. Part of that is tied to the rapid rate of growth. Now, would we have seen that without the HAP money? Who knows? But it's a nice way of saying, look, we got something out of that growth. I think putting it towards long-term, water sustainability is really valuable. Now, with respect to hitting the 30 affordable unit targets, I don't say this to come across as saying previous council was wrong. But I was there in September when the Dollars for Doors program was up for discussion. And I distinctly remember being like, nobody's going to sign up for this. Like it's the economics of it just don't make sense, which is why you're not seeing much uptick, right? So I don't know what we can do to reinvigorate, or not even reinvigorate, because there is nothing to invigorate or but like, how do you get a market force to adopt the affordable housing model? And throwing money at them is one thing, but you'd have to up that grant significantly, because if they're taking a 40% market reduction or a 50% market reduction on rents, like, and you give them $10,000, like they're losing money by doing that, right? Which is why you're not getting anybody signing up for it, or very few people expressing interest. So, we either do something dramatic to the Dollars for Doors program, or I hate to say it, sort of accept the fact it's probably not going to get you there. We're not going to hit that 30 unit target. What are we doing with the remaining money? And I do think we have those 2 projects that was mentioned that are potentially looking at it, maybe upping the grant to sort of entice them towards finishing that. And if we can get 7, 10, 15 units out of it, that'll really help, right? Like getting some further funds, but we should be looking at seniors housing. Like I think almost 100% of the money that we have set aside should be towards that. Right? They're also affordable units, and they're missing, but like, I don't know if that's putting it towards land purchasing. I don't know if that's putting it towards helping the Lodge Foundation do their studies. But I think aside from the Dollars to Doors program and maybe the water well upgrade, I think everything needs to go towards that. And that's where we should be focusing more or less all of our attention. That's everything.
Thank you. I'll jump in. I will say there's a couple projects on that list that do pique my interest. One is the 47th Ave Trail. That is such a barrier. I see a real struggle in us moving forward with that. But it is really the key connection for anyone who is living in the areas where a lot of our more affordable housing currently exists into getting to grocery and services. If you've ever tried to walk from anywhere on that side of town, it is a real challenge. So it is one I'm interested in, the water well upgrade, of course, and also the parking study. And my justification where that links to housing is if we're looking at making sure our parking is right-sized in all the ways, it could allow us to make some changes down the road. And I think it's something we do need to do. But other than those couple of projects, I absolutely agree. I think pouring everything we can into those affordable housing units and really directing the bulk of the rest of this into something really senior specific. I don't know exactly what that answer is. And I would really look to administration to come back and say, this is how we could achieve what you want, council, given that we're willing to put really the bulk of our money into that. And it's not firm direction, but I certainly, seniors housing is where I'd like to see that go. Councillor Mearns.
Yeah, I would echo Councillor Stindy in the affordable housing units. Whatever we need to do to get that to ensure we need the money. And I guess nothing's ever for sure, and then seniors housing. We heard that so much on the campaign trail. Everyone did. And we'd be remiss if we didn't do something substantial to support our seniors, so.
Ms. Devlin.
Thank you, Your Worship. If I might jump in, I think Ms. Lemanis and I would like to just make sure Council understands a little bit of how we had anticipated potentially getting some of those units. And talk a little bit about, where council can spend some of those dollars. So first, before I forget this, my initial comment I was going to make to Councillor Bilodeau's comment about looking for funding for initial studies or other work that would lay the foundation for getting to the development and design stage. Council can choose to use funds towards those, no problem. Regardless of whether or not they're able to submit a permit in time to meet that target. That is still valuable or approved methods in which we can spend those funds. So that is something to keep in mind. If the goal is to continue to fund affordable housing, the funds can still be spent that way. It's no different than purchasing land. Even if it's not going to be built on within that time frame, that is still something that council can look at doing. Going back to how we were looking at achieving some of those targets and where the $30,000 and the Dollars for Doors program was established from. The MLI Select program currently that a lot of the developments in town, major developments, are accessing, so our multifamily units, apartments, and some of our row housing developments. There's a commitment to that program where so many units have to be committed as affordable, so they already have to achieve an affordable rate with CMHC through that program. Additionally, they can also get points, so to speak. The way the program is allocated, you get so many points for affordable housing and you can get so many points for green infrastructure that helps make the projects more sustainable and affordable over time, as Councillor Ostindi has pointed out. So developers pick and choose how they're going to achieve their points for their projects, and then they're allocated so many affordable units that they have to meet through their developments in that manner. So we had hoped to piggyback on those units where developers were already committing for a potentially up to 10-year time frame to lock in those affordable housing rates, some of them at significantly below market rental rates, which then we felt would meet our program, and we felt it was a good way for them to enter into the agreements with us, get additional funding to help ensure their projects hopefully are incentivized to continue to move forward, and then we could get credit for those as well. What we're finding is through some of our conversations in the last apartment that was completed last year, The developer, when we approached them with the conversation, because we knew they were also getting MLI Select funding, potentially, was that they said they didn't want to commit to the town's program for a potentially five-year time frame, because the funds were subsidizing essentially a lower cost rent for them, because after 5 years, they would need to likely evict their tenants and raise the rents. So it wasn't truly sustainable, and it won't be truly affordable. So I will caution council with that. We can throw money at it, but it's for a short time frame, and it won't actually likely continue to end up being affordable unless it's through the committed not-for-profit partners we already have in the community, which the two that we do have been discussed and mentioned today, and we are working and have had multiple conversations with both of them, one of which is looking to proceed with a townhouse development rather quickly. And we're trying to support them in any manner that we can to make sure that their project can be viable as well. Should they require additional funding, or the lodge through our conversations, we were happy to bring those back to council to say, you know, these have real merit and proven record of what they're doing for affordability in our community, and they're probably worthwhile of seeing additional dollars to support those projects. But just a bit of caution that throwing more money at some of them may not necessarily end up with much in the end after 5 years. As a result of that, it might help us get some more targets achieved potentially. But how many, I'm not sure. Developers, we were quite surprised at some of the cautions that they had on their end for not wanting to participate, so. And I know Ms. Lamanna's noted it earlier, but we met with our CMHC representatives last week, and they did say that everyone was struggling to achieve those targets. They really weren't sure what the minister was going to do when it came down to the final reporting period if we didn't meet those targets. But they said even Calgary and Edmonton are really struggling to try to get there, and they know that there's only so much that municipalities can do. So I'm not sure if they would actually withhold the full funding amount, but if progress has been made and we can show that progress is being made, they may look favorably towards that.
Councillor Cindy.
Yeah, just to quote those words, showing progress, I want to make sure we're showing progress so that we can do the real work of affordable housing through community groups. Because the more I'm learning about this in the last several years, that's really where affordable housing comes from, is community-based groups like lodges, like Civil Link Community Housing Society. They do the real affordable work. And that's where, sometimes you just have to be pragmatic, check the checkbox, and then go do the real work. So I want to emphasize that sentiment I have. Two other comments, I think, that I circled here. Secondary suites, our program. I hope we can continue it as a council past our HAP days so that money just keeps recycling, giving out loans. Maybe it has to be reformatted. I'm sure inflation makes all numbers small. So that would be neat to see that continue on in the future, because it will create affordable and more mixed housing in our town to continue a program like that. And another infrastructure, a weird one, is sidewalks. Especially around seniors housing, is you need wider sidewalks. So our current infrastructure around the lodge is sadly lacking for width of sidewalk. They have to be more a trail standard than a regular city sidewalk. And even coming out of the back of the manor towards the next source, doing accessible movement infrastructure there, wider sidewalks, then gives people living there currently and potential future development in those areas accessibility to get out and to move around the town and get to the doctors or urgent care, or just go see a hockey game with the grandkids. So that can be those kind of investments are very good for housing, affordable housing, and seniors housing. So those were two things I spotted in my list I hadn't mentioned earlier.
Councillor Bilodeau.
I'm sorry, it's going to really come across as being, I don't know. I feel like I'm pushing, but I need to know the answer to this. This is my question. So number 8, it reads, purchase of land to partner with an affordable housing provider. My question is, we know how difficult it is to find people to build affordable housing for reasons. If you took out affordable and put in senior, is the answer yes? Like, I'm trying to understand why we can say that it's okay to use half money for affordable housing and we can buy land for that. I want to know if we can buy land for seniors housing because we have seniors housing trying to buy land right now. A yes or no answer.
Specifically for the lodge, I'm assuming is what the question is? Is that, because I would say for seniors housing can look very different. We have some high-end seniors apartments being proposed right now to go in. I would say that would not be a wise use of money because those apartments are going to be geared towards individuals who can afford to pay for those rents. Subsidized housing for seniors, or again, discounted housing somehow would fall into that affordable category and definition that, yes, that meets the criteria for CMHC's program because it's specific for construction of affordable housing or land or building acquisition for affordable housing. So they do stipulate affordable housing. So there has to be an affordable housing component in there. And I would say if the lodge subsidizes housing rents, then that likely meets that criteria.
So currently the lodge subsidizes that, and I can speak to that. My mother is in there and there's the 30% rule of gross income. So if I'm hearing you right, are you saying if we continued with that model, there could be half funding available to purchase land for seniors housing that would provide subsidized housing?
Yes, if the housing is subsidized to make it affordable, it would meet the program criteria for purchasing land. The council could choose to give direction for doing that. I think it would be fair to probably say that even if it's a mixed development, as long as a portion of it is affordable and subsidized, it would still likely meet that criteria.
Councillor Stinty.
Just a question, thinking of a model that's been promoted, say, in 60 West. It's not exactly seniors housing, but they're building it to be attractive to seniors, and it's full market. They would still be eligible for the apartment incentives that we have under this program still, correct?
Correct, yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Mearns.
So based on Councillor Bilodeau's question and your response, how do we, so let's say, yeah, okay, let's make the decision to purchase the land, but it's 5 years out from being built. Does that cause issues?
So the program does allow us to buy land that's intended for affordable housing development. If a project wasn't to come to fruition for 5 years, that's still an investment that we've used half dollars for towards affordable housing. Where I guess our concern is just like we want to try and achieve those 30 affordable units. So if you're going to take some of the remaining half funds to put towards land purchase, we do have to consider how are we still going to achieve those 30 units. And as Ms. Devlin had commented, it's been a patience game in waiting for people to come to the Dollars for Doors program. They're working through their own financing through the MLI Select program. So I'm in direct communication with a lot of these applicants, constantly checking up with them if there's anything they need, trying to work through some of the economics of it. As Ms. Devlin alluded to, even though some of those units may not be as affordable as we would like them to be, if they meet our affordable housing definition, we'll get credit for our 30 units. And I wanted to note that how we will prove that those units are affordable is that there'll be a caveat registered on the title that the unit is to be maintained at a certain rate for a certain number of years. So that is how we're going to be proving to CMHC that these units are affordable. So I don't know if that clarifies anything for you, Councillor Mearns, but.
Councillor Johannesson, can I jump into you next?
No, for me, I really, I support the well 12 upgrade. I think when I saw the pros of it, one of it was saving taxpayer money, and as we know, the water has been an issue. So for me, I really support that. Ms. Devlin, I have a question. I think the answer is probably no, but I'm going to ask it anyways, because I'm looking at the parking study. Is there a way, because we budgeted in our operating budget a certain amount of dollars for the culture and recreation study. Is there a way to tie half into something like that, considering that the culture and recreation study is tied in with our population growth? So I'd be interested in hearing that, if you knew or if not.
Yeah, to Councillor Johannesson, no, unfortunately, anything related to recreation doesn't fall into the criteria that we can utilize. Do you want to just bring up the slide? Can we? Yeah. We'll maybe just bring the slide back up too for council, just as you're sitting there thinking, so that you can see. That's one. What items? So anything infrastructure related, water, sewer, stormwater infrastructure could go into that category, as well as road upgrades or other investments in community related infrastructure is what they call it. But recreation is a clear gap in there that it doesn't fall into the programming anywhere that we could spend funds on.
What about the cultural part?
No, that one still wouldn't meet the criteria.
Yeah, I kind of figured, but I just thought I'd ask. And then can you pull up the other, just the spreadsheet? Yeah. So I would support the H.J. Cody lighting. That's been a topic of conversation for a number of years, since I got here with my wife at the school too. So I could be behind that as well. Other than that, I'm not certain about the other ones, but definitely the well 12 and the 47th Ave as well. So that lighting as well, I would be definitely in support of.
Can I ask a question about the H.J. Cody lighting? One of my challenges and why I'm not incredibly in favor of that is, what happens when that's not H.J. Cody? And just not knowing what development might come in there next. I would hate to undertake a project of $500,000, knowing that there'll be I know that pathway would still be used. That doesn't change, but there may be some major upgrades, downgrades, something to that site. It really won't benefit students in the same way, or there's a very good chance that it won't a handful of years from now. And just with the timing we have to make that decision, we won't have the answer to that before we have to spend it. So there's not a question in there, just a concern whether, if this is not a school down the road, is someone else doing something that may already have some lighting changes, a completely different setup around there. I'm not feeling super confident in that commitment with the knowledge that I have around what that site might be. Councillor Mearns and then Ostindi.
I guess I need to understand the timelines. I know we have these 30 units that we have to achieve to receive the full funding. Is there any urgency on deciding what we need to do with the extra until we get closer to knowing we have that those 30 units? And yeah, is there any urgency?
Through the chair to Councillor Mearns, there is somewhat of an urgency in deciding where we would like to spend these funds, because we only have, a limited time to undertake these projects. So that's why we're having this conversation this evening, is to, try and determine where council's priorities are And we need to, obviously, for some of those, there'd be procurement processes, all kinds of other processes involved, which is why there is some urgency around deciding on where we should spend the $50.
A question, and then I'm going to try and get us somewhere here, hopefully, around, let's say we said yes to all these projects. Can we staff and implement all of them?
Through the chair, as I had said in my presentation, there's some of the parking studies, obviously we would use consultants to complete the work. Some of them could run together. So for example, an MDP and LUB update could run together. A parking study wouldn't take that long to do. So those we would have the help of consultants to do those. In terms of some of the I guess, infrastructure projects, we would have to have that discussion with Public Works in terms of the timing for those. But yeah, we do think that we could undertake these with the staffing that we do have.
Okay. Now, to just get us to a point of completion, I'll say I'm not prepared to go past 8 o'clock tonight. So I know we have a limited time, but also want to give you something to go forward with. Would it make sense for us to go through the list and do a bit of a yes, no, maybe prioritization here? Because if there's a couple of yeses, at least those could start being some action if they're yeses of the majority of council. And then we would also look for some information back on how we could really utilize that seniors housing portion. Sure. Do you have a suggestion on how to get where we need to go?
Sorry, I just wanted to add through the chair to Councillor Mearns that while there is, I guess, some urgency to deciding, we don't have to do that this evening. We could come back in a month or a couple of months so that you guys have time to kind of reflect on some of these projects that we've presented to you. So yeah, I just wanted to clarify that we don't have to make those decisions tonight.
Ms. Phillips.
I just thought I'd bring up, can you point out the items that will be a future budget item in the next few years? Like, I feel like just so you're aware, it's fine not to fund them here, but we will be needing to bring forward, like the land use bylaw and MDP updates are 10 years old. They're probably due in the next few years. The lighting on 50th and the water wells are the ones that I think we will likely need to go forward with regardless, correct?
That is correct. The MDP is in the future operating budget for $150,000 upcoming within the next 2 years. Land use bylaw rewrite is not. We've been proactively updating and making little amendments where we need to. However, it will eventually get to the point where a comprehensive update is required. 47th Avenue Trail is not yet budgeted anywhere in our capital or operating. The 50th Street lighting project, I don't believe is budgeted yet. However, I know Public Works has been talking about it and does have their preliminary cost estimates for it. So they likely will be planning to put it in the budget because that section of the roadway is very dark and it has been coming up. Waterwell 12, this one may already be in the budget or budget funding may have already been granted for it. I would have to double check with Public Works on that, but it will be in the capital budget. And that is it. The housing action plan is not yet in the budget, and the other one was land.
Just to make sure that we're aware of that.
And we did refrain from putting in any other infrastructure projects simply because if council chose to go down that route, we thought then we'd involve Public Works in creating a more realistic plan on which ones with which costing made the most sense for council to invest in, if that's where you chose to invest those funds. So there are other options if infrastructure was a priority.
So Ms. Phillips, I guess I'll look for your suggestion. How do we get to a place where we've at least moved the needle? I know tonight it doesn't have to be decision night, but we certainly want to give enough direction that decision night can happen within the next month, or 6 weeks or 2 weeks or whatever that looks like. We can't leave it just like this because this is not too far off of how we left it last time. And we certainly want to give you something to act on. I know that you're going to do some more research in how to best utilize some targeted affordable seniors housing funds. I think that was heard loud and clear. But in terms of the rest, is there some items that council just would like to see removed? Would that be positive direction? Is there?
Yeah, I agree. I think, the ones that you want to remove, because the ones I've heard positives on are 47th Ave, the Wells, and the seniors housing are the biggest ones, with a couple other, one here, one here, one here kind of thing. So I think if you went through line by line and said, if we were for sure getting rid of, and if there's some that you're thinking we might keep, then we can go back, brainstorm around exactly what we can do around, for instance, the seniors. And
Okay, let's do that line by line. And I'll just ask that question. Is there anyone who's interested in removing it? So let's talk about the 50th Street lighting. Is anyone interested in seeing that removed? Councillor Oosthuizen?
My bias is I support nearly all of this, but not in this budget.
So
in this approach.
Let me be clear. Is there anything you'd like to see removed from this budget, not the project completely?
Yeah, I'm going to do a bias towards putting as much money in senior housing, land purchases, and these other ones, so I'm going to say no to 50th Street.
Yeah, let's do the thumbs. Councillor Iwanicki, I can see you if you do your thumbs up or down for in or out. That is out. 50th Ave Trail. 47th, sorry. Just merging the lines at this point. Do we have a desire to keep talking about that? 1, 2, 3. Oh, that one's out. Trail lighting HJ Cody. That is out. Water well upgrade. Easy in. Parking study. We're a tie. I don't know where that lands us.
47th Ave was a tie as well.
Was also a tie.
Normally with the vote, it's out, but again, this is informal. If they're so on the line, you want to keep those two in as just considerations, that's what I would recommend. And then we can bring back more information. So
And then
I'd
we
say
can have
keep
Councillor
47th Ave.
Payne's. Yeah, so we'll do those as maybes. The parking
Perfect.
study. Land use bylaw update. Oh, I can't see Joe. Hold on. There we go. Okay, that's out. MDP update. That's in either way, even though Tim was on the fence. Housing action plan. Can you highlight what the housing action plan was?
So a housing action plan is a strategic plan on how the town will continue to address housing needs in our community. So similar to what we did, I'll choose an example with secondary suites. So we identified that secondary suites was a means for us to address some of the need in our community. So how would we go about supporting the development of secondary suites? So a housing action plan would take the time to identify some of those needs and some of those action items that we could then implement. Typically, they're usually a 5 to 10 year plan on how to ensure that we continue to meet housing needs in our community. So instead of being reactive, we can be proactively meeting those needs.
Okay, let's vote on that one. That is in. The land purchase was just added tonight with a dollar figure, correct? Or was that on the list before?
That was on the list before.
Okay. I guess for me, land purchase and seniors housing could be, I'm not sure how they work together, so I don't feel super comfortable saying yes or no to either of those, because I'm really looking for the most impactful way to support affordable seniors housing. Does anyone else feel that challenge when it comes to a direct conversation relating to that? Because that, for me, that could be through a land purchase or it could be through something else. And I really just want to hear from the experts on what is the best on that. Councillor Ostindi.
I was going to vote thumbs up on land purchase. However, that didn't mean I want to run off and grab some land right now. That wasn't my intention in saying yes, but it's saying if we need to grab some land as reports get done in this very near future, we might suddenly realize strategically we need to grab this lot before it's gone. There's a number of lots around town that have some really neat potential, but it depends on what project goes forward if it's a good match. Keeping it as cash to buy land is a thumbs up in the same way. So I'm to future land purchase, right? Or to put into a project where some of it goes to land purchase, some whatever it is.
Yeah, sure, Councillor Mearns.
Really crazy thought, so hold your laughter. Is there anything we could do with this money to look at our old town office site, demolition, clean it up, get it ready for development?
Yes, the funds could be utilized to go towards that. So again, no different than acquisition, site preparation, those types of things. Funds could be directed there if council chose to do that. I will also add that we could definitely earmark funds for land purchase, details to be kind of figured out. But one thing to consider is that if the town did want to purchase land for affordable housing provisions, council doesn't necessarily have to give it away. So that's something to consider. It could be something that's stipulated in a long-term lease so that it becomes a sustainable funding source over time, but then those not-for-profit groups don't have to outlay that cash, which is usually a significant barrier to those projects up front. So that's something council could consider. The other thing is also if council chose to provide a grant for some of those pre-planning activities, that is also something you could do. It doesn't just have to be land, don't just think about it as land purchase. Funds could be repurposed in a way that it could be a grant specific to, a project or a not-for-profit housing provider specific to those things, if that's the goal you're hoping to achieve. There's definitely ways around, that we could come up with that could meet those goals that council hopes to see.
I'm open to both of those things. I'd love to learn more about that site. I guess I'll ask the question, is there will of council to have further conversation around that, Councillor Ostindi?
I literally had written a line here, town office could be a housing retail project by January 27. We could have a building permit, I'm sure, if we were like dead set on it, right? I mean.
Is there any objection to receiving more information back about that? Okay, can we write that one down? And with that, then I'm hearing there's enough support for something, land purchase, that site, something adjacent. We're not going to lock ourselves into the wording. I think I heard mostly across the board that seniors housing is something we have a real interest in. So we'll keep that on the list. I'm actually okay not, because I think what we're asking for is this to come back with a few things off the list and then a few further details, because we don't know what that looks like. I would love administration to give us some suggested values. Same with the land purchase. We have to know a bit more to assign that. And then dollar for doors top up. I guess what I'll say to your comment before, I'll say yes, but really to me that's an affordable housing top up. I don't know the best way to do that, but I do still see a value in really trying to achieve those units and hope so I don't know the best way to do that. Is there another aggressive way that would get someone more sustainably in? That of course would be a better choice, but I am willing to put more money to ensure we hit that target. I think the risk of what we would lose is so much more. Yeah, so seeing some support to keep some line for that in. So then I guess at this point, administration, is it a reasonable ask to say, can this come back one more time with a few more fleshed out plans? Council, is there anything we're missing on this list that you had on your own list that we need some more information, knowing that we really are working towards some decisions quite soon here. So the time to add a new item is not at the next meeting. We want to give that thought now so that it can come back a little bit further baked for us to make some decisions around. Okay. I look forward to talking about, is there more we can provide you? Do you have enough?
Yeah, through the chair, I think we have enough that we can bring this back and start to really flesh this out, so.
That sounds great. Thank you. Okay, let's move along from this. We've got council and committee event reports are listed. As a reminder, everyone, if you've attended anything of interest recently, please plug them in. I also have a few on my desk to enter, so Councillor Mearns.
And maybe I just need some support. I've entered some, but I've never seen them in here.
This happened to me, that's why you're seeing late reports.
So I've submitted all of mine, I haven't seen one yet, so.
Okay, can you just give a date of a specific one and send it to Ms. Phillips and Jolene potentially?
Yep.
And then they can research into what happened.
Yeah, community services, last Monday.
Okay.
So whatever that date is.
And
Yeah.
it could have potentially been the cutoff, but if you haven't seen them for quite some time, we'll make
Yeah.
sure that's not the case.
Okay.
And also a reminder, this isn't just for strict committees. You know, if you've attended education to report back on, anything else related to that, please do. Upcoming meetings and events, we've got a number of items coming up. Is there anything else, council, we need to address tonight? Seeing none, thank you all for working through that. Have a great evening. Our meeting is adjourned.